Chapter 1866. Although this was shameless, it was a reasonable use of the rules of the competition. No one said that more than a dozen people couldn't work together, right? The young man in green was very proud. He had already made up his mind. This time, he would win with the advantage of numbers. Next, he would use money to open the way and smash the opponents into admitting defeat. No matter what, he had to get a place to enter the fourth level. He didn't need to think too much about what would happen next. But to be able to stand on the stage of the fourth level, he naturally had enough of the limelight. Rich people could be so willful. There were more than 100 people in this group, and now there were more than a dozen people in a group. This kind of power was really big. Let's eliminate them first. A voice rang out. Everyone heard it. Although there were more than a dozen people, there were more than 100 of them. Could it be that 100 people couldn't beat a dozen people? Go! These people rushed forward one after another and surrounded the green-robed young man and his group to beat him up. The young man in green was dumbfounded. He never thought that this would be the result. There were more than 100 people. How could a dozen people stop them? When the audience saw this, they couldn't help but laugh. It was rare to see such a scene. They clearly had the upper hand, but the situation was reversed in an instant. That was why it was said that one had to be low-key. This was the result of being too high profile. If the young man in green knew how to use a little strategy, or even if he didn't shout so arrogantly, he would just sweep the battle as soon as it started. With more than a dozen people working together, they would be able to instantly clear the field. But now, they were going to be beaten like dogs. Bang 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 bang. In a chaotic fight, the young man in green and the others were instantly beaten to a pulp. They were just relying on their numbers. They didn't have any outstanding experts who could turn the tide. How could they resist such a group fight? The young man in green was beaten to the ground. God knows how many footprints were left on his body. He raised his head with difficulty and found the direction where the first sound came from. He saw a young man smiling at him. He was instantly furious. This guy definitely did it on purpose. Just you wait, I'll remember you. Ling Han, meanwhile, sighed. In truth, he, too, only wanted to quietly be a handsome man, but who asked everyone to be in the same group? Even if he did not yell, in the end, he would still have to personally deal with the other party. He might as well fan the fire and make it more lively. Ling Han waved his hand and said with a smile, "Have a safe journey." Peng, the azure-robed young man, was violently sent flying out of the battle ring. According to the rules, he was disqualified from the competition. The green-clothed young man trembled as he crawled to his feet. His face was covered in bruises, and he said hatefully, "We are enemies now. No one can play tricks on me, Shantanwu." Ling Han frowned. He did not know why, but he hated this kind of surname. If he had known that the other party had such a hateful surname, he would not have let him escape so easily. He should have beaten him up again and again. Don't worry, the other party obviously won't let this matter rest. I'll have more chances to beat him up in the future. When Yamada Takashi's group was completely cleared, the remaining 100 or so people actually cheered in unison. Some even hugged each other, appearing to be in harmony. It was impossible to believe that they were actually competitors. "You're so despicable. You actually stabbed me." Someone suddenly screamed. He had just hugged someone, and in the end, a cold sword had been stabbed into his waist. Fortunately, Zhang Chen was too powerful, and he had only been heavily injured. He wouldn't die. My buttocks! There was another person who was kicked out of the battle ring, holding his buttocks as he cried out in pain. At first, they had still been in harmony, but now, they immediately turned hostile. It was very comical. The spectators on the stage all laughed loudly. They felt that this group's battle was really too hilarious. Meanwhile, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden smiled bitterly. As long as her husband was present, it seemed like even the most serious matter would turn into a farce. Ling Han scratched his head. He really hadn't done anything. He had only yelled at the top of his lungs. "Pretty boy, get out." A middle-aged man brandished a large saber and slashed over. They were all severing mundane tears here, yet they were fighting in a small area. Actually, merely the shock waves from the battle were enough to make one suffer. This person's physique was very strong. His skin exuded a faint silver luster under the impact of the shock waves from the battle, and it was as if he had transformed into a silver god of war. With a force that could shatter the heavens and rend the earth, he swept towards Ling Han. "Careful of your feet," Ling Han said smilingly. "What?" The middle-aged man faltered slightly. "I'm slashing over, yet you're telling me to be careful of my feet? What do you mean, brat? Has your head been kicked by a donkey?" He thought, but the saber in his hand didn't even pause, and continued to slash towards Ling Han's neck. When he saw that the blade was about to slash towards Ling Han's neck, he couldn't help but show an expression of joy. He was definitely going to succeed. But right at this moment, he saw Ling Han raise his hand and give a light brush. He didn't make any big movements, but the saber that he had slashed out suddenly changed direction and slashed towards the ground. Coincidentally, he just happened to have shot out and stepped down with his left foot. This saber strike landed on the surface of his left foot. "Ah!" The middle-aged man instantly screamed. This saber strike was very powerful, and he had imbued all of his regulations with it. With a single strike, half of his entire foot was severed. Blood spurted out. "Careful of your feet," so this was what it meant. He stared blankly at Ling Han. There was no such coincidental thing in this world. Ling Han's casual words just happened to have guessed the ending. His opponent's strength was so strong that it defied the natural order. That was why he could control everything and make everything develop according to his will. The middle-aged man's forehead was filled with cold sweat. Fortunately, his opponent had only let this saber strike his foot, and not his little brother. He was already being merciful. "Many thanks." He left behind these words, and hurriedly ran out of the battle ring. On the stage, everyone was both confused and amused. How could there be such a person? Just a moment ago, he had been aggressively swinging his saber to slash at someone, yet in the end he had slashed at his own foot, and then he thanked his opponent. It was practically ridiculous. This is because that young man is very strong. That's why that saber wielder would slash at the instep of his own foot, and still have to thank him for not killing him, a young man explained. Though he had said that Ling Han was very strong, his expression was one of arrogance. That's the prodigy of the Qing clan, Qing Fengyun. He's really incredible. It's said that he's almost become a king tier. Since he said that the young man is very strong, he must be very strong. The bystanders were all discussing spiritedly. Someone boldly asked, "Young Master Cheng, why aren't you participating? Also, if you were to go up against that young man, what are your chances of victory?" Cheng Fengyun's expression was filled with pride, and he answered, 100%. Though Ling Han was very strong in his eyes, he was only SOSO. As for why he wasn't participating, that was a joke. This time, even Zhao Qingfeng had come, and with a single battle, he had forced 3 holy sons to leave with their tails between their legs. What kind of strength was that? Anyone who participated in the competition would be trampled on by Zhao Qingfeng, so why should he seek his own humiliation? He was already very famous, and had no need to use this kind of martial arts competition to raise his own reputation. "Young Master Cheng, in your opinion, can this young man emerge victorious from this group?" Another person asked. Cheng Fengyun thought for a moment, shook his head and said, "Impossible. Right now, he has shown too much of his abilities, and will definitely be targeted by the combined efforts of the others. Wanting to emerge victorious will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens." Chapter 1868. The Shantian clan could be considered a veteran clan in Alchemy City. They were not a noble clan of alchemy, but the clan's ancestor was a dividing soul tier elite, and they had some fame in the 3rd level. Now, they actually failed in the 1st level, which naturally made them lose face. If not for the fact that they wanted to reduce the pressure of competition, Shan Tianwu would not have specially come to the 1st level to participate in the tournament, and the result was that he did not even pass the 1st level. However, he had offended the Shantian clan, and still wanted to act as if nothing had happened. If not for the fact that this was Alchemy City, Ling Han would have already died a dozen or even 100 times. Ling Han crooked a finger and said, "Come, you also want to get beaten up." Ha! Shan Tianjiu laughed loudly, but there was no humor in it. It was a complete sneer. Do you think that I am an idiot like this younger brother of mine? Shan Tianwu. However, the gap between the two brothers was indeed very large. One was a prodigy, and the other was relatively mediocre. One had long since advanced into the fourth severance, while the other had barely advanced into the severing mundane tier, and basically had no hope of advancing further. Thus, Shan Tianjiu had enough confidence to be proud. Ling Han wanted to make a move. Though the tournament was about to begin, suppressing this kind of trash was a matter of raising a hand. However, he had not made a move when he saw an employee run over and said, "The tournament is about to begin, why don't you quickly come and draw lots?" With this interruption, Ling Han also gave up on the idea of making a move and followed the other into the arena. "Brother!" Shan Tianwu called out indignantly. This older brother not only called him an idiot, but also let Ling Han enter the arena. Were you really his older brother or not? Yet Shan Tianjiu shook his head. Though the Shantian clan was very awesome, compared to Grandmaster Zicheng, they were nothing. Even if he was given 10,000 guts, he would not dare barge into the arena and act impudently. He humphed and said, "Go in, and it is not too late to make a move when he leaves." Shan Tianwu could only nod. In front of this domineering older brother, he had always been submissive. The two of them also entered the arena and began to watch. The battles of the second day were no longer chaotic, but rather one-on-one battles. After all, 99% of the people had been eliminated yesterday, and now there were not more than 1,000 people left. He had to use them sparingly, or else he wouldn't be able to fight enough for the remaining 9 days. After drawing lots, the contestants who had won the day before were divided into 16 regions. Only the champion of each region could advance, and they had to win 2 more rounds before they could enter the finals of the 4th level. Ling Han was assigned to the 2nd region. His first opponent was Tang Feng. He did not know the situation of this opponent and did not take it to heart. For a person who was determined to win the final championship, it did not matter what opponents he encountered along the way. They would all be defeated by him. The battles of all 16 districts began at the same time. Otherwise, it would be impossible to end in a single day. If it was dragged out too long, it would be tedious and boring. Some of the battles ended very quickly because many geniuses from other forces had come to the 1st level, and there was no lack of king tiers among them. Naturally, the battles were settled in an instant. However, there were only kings here and no emperors. After all, emperors came from at least 4-star factions and had some special privileges here. They did not need to fight on the 1st level. There were also incomparably lingering battles. Both sides fought back and forth, and in this situation, a victor could not be determined even after a day. Ling Han waited for a while, and then it was his turn. His opponent had already ascended the stage. It was a gloomy-looking youth wearing blue clothes with a cauldron symbol embroidered on them. Tang Feng, the saint's son of the Green Cauldron sect. Green Cauldron sect. The Green Cauldron sect from a 3-star faction. Hiss, I heard that Tang Feng has the aptitude of a king tier. He can suppress 100 experts of the same level by himself. Of course, otherwise, how could he be called a king tier? This Tang Feng was in the limelight, and many people immediately recognized him. More people also paid attention to him. After all, he was a king tier, and it was not easy for him to appear. And in everyone's eyes, Ling Han had naturally become Tang Feng's foil, only to highlight the latter's strength. On the stage, Shan Tianjiu also revealed a smile and muttered, "I did not expect this kid's first opponent to be Tang Feng. It is impossible for him to enter the 2nd round. Even I only have a 50-50 chance of winning against Tang Feng." He was definitely putting gold on his face. With his strength, if he were to face Tang Feng, there would definitely be only one word for him: defeat. Moreover, it would be a crushing defeat, or even an instant defeat. Meanwhile, Shan Tianwu appeared to be very excited, and very much anticipated the scene of Ling Han being defeated. Then he would add insult to injury, and give Ling Han another beating, causing him to suffer both mental and physical pain. And in yesterday's seats, Qing Fengyun and the others sat in a row. Because everyone had bought through tickets, they were practically the same people from yesterday. Young Master Cheng, what do you think will happen today? One person, perhaps on purpose, actually asked Cheng Fengyun to comment again. All of a sudden, the gazes of the surroundings all focused on them. Being stared at by so many people, with Cheng Fengyun's strong vanity, he was naturally too embarrassed to refuse. He thought for a moment and said, though Ling Han is not weak, Tang Feng is clearly stronger. You have to know that those people yesterday were just a motley crew. They only had numbers, but did not know how to work together, nor did they have any existences with astonishing individual strength. But today is different. Those who were able to stand out from yesterday's team battle are all capable of being called elites. And Tang Feng, you all heard him. He is the holy son of the Green Cauldron sect, and a king tier of the younger generation. I dare say with certainty that Tang Feng will definitely win this battle, and it will be a crushing victory at that. If Ling Han was not taken into consideration, this deduction was still relatively reasonable. Perhaps the holy son that had walked out from a 3-star sect could not compare to the successors of 4-star forces, but the difference would not be too great. Thus, everyone nodded repeatedly, expressing their approval of Cheng Fengyun's method. However, Ling Han is really very strong. Yesterday, he defeated more than 60 people with a single move. Perhaps he is also a king tier. However, there were still people who held different opinions. Why don't we bet on something? Someone deliberately fanned the flames and asked Cheng Fengyun. Cheng Fengyun's arrogance returned, and he said, if Ling Han can still turn the tables in this battle, or even if he can last a full 100 moves, I will eat the chair under my butt. Good. The crowd naturally did not mind the matter getting bigger. The spectators all cheered, as if they were praising Cheng Fengyun, but in truth, they had forced him into a corner, and he could no longer turn back. Cheng Fengyun was full of confidence. The strength of Tang Feng's abilities was definitely guaranteed, and there could not possibly be any problem with his own judgment. Yesterday, that was because Yamada Wu and the others had been too useless. Everyone's interest grew even stronger. Originally, the outcome of Ling Han and Tang Feng's battle had nothing to do with them at all, but now that it involved a bet, that sense of anticipation instantly exploded. Chapter 1869. Just admit defeat, Tang Feng said calmly, appearing indifferent. Ling Han chuckled and said, I've never had that habit. Fighting with me, you will only seek humiliation, Tang Feng continued, appearing very disdainful. Tang Feng spoke again, appearing to be very disdainful. He was the holy son of a 3-star sect, yet he actually had to pass through layers of selection before he could pass. This made him feel humiliated. Before him, all his opponents should prostrate themselves at his feet and respectfully send him all the way to the top. Ling Han shook his head and said, Make your move. Tang Feng frowned, showing displeasure. I've tried to persuade you again and again, but you still won't listen. He said, Let me make a move, and it won't be as simple as a crushing defeat. Oh, tell me about it, Ling Han said calmly. You will be crippled by me. Tang Feng humphed, obviously angry. He really didn't know what was good for him. In that case, he could only make him suffer a little. It was just as well. He could use this person as a warning to others. Tomorrow, there should be no one who dared to fight with him, and then he would directly admit defeat. Despicable, why must he be beaten into submission? He stretched out his right hand, and without using any celestial technique, simply grabbed out at Ling Han. But he was a king tier of the younger generation, and this casual stretch of his hand was filled with might. Endless stars surged in his palm. Even if they were sitting outside, innumerable people felt their hearts suddenly contract, a layer of goosebumps rising all over their bodies. This strike was too frightening. As expected of a king tier, strong, so strong that it rendered others speechless. The palm strike arrived, like the fall of a great star, possessing the might to destroy the world, yet Ling Han smiled calmly and said, Careful of your foot. Pooh, a considerable number instantly spluttered. That was naturally Cheng Fengyun and the others, who were incredibly familiar with this phrase. But the problem was, yesterday, Ling Han's opponents were only a motley crew, and today, Tang Feng was a 4th Severance King tier. How could he be compared to yesterday's trash? Could Ling Han create a miracle? Ah! Tang Feng suddenly let out a blood-curdling screech, because when his palm pressed down, it was lightly pushed away by Ling Han, changing the direction of the attack and smashing towards his feet. What kind of might was contained in that palm? Even though the arena had been reinforced by a formation, it still shook violently. Tang Feng's entire left foot was smashed into smithereens. He looked at Ling Han in shock, his face showing an expression as if he had seen a ghost. He actually forgot about the pain and just stood there in a daze. I told you to be careful of your feet. Ling Han shook his head. Tang Feng had a bitter expression on his face. Just from this exchange, he knew that he was far from being a match for Ling Han. He was indeed a king tier, but Ling Han was a king among kings. The gap between their battle prowess was as wide as the heavens. I admit defeat. However, some vigor had already returned to his face. His opponent was definitely the heir of a celestial king tier force, and had intentionally concealed his identity. His defeat was not undeserved. On the stage, the people who witnessed this scene all sighed incessantly. In the beginning, Tang Feng could be said to be awe-inspiring, but when they really clashed, he was no match for him at all. Have you all recognized the wrong person? How could this possibly be a king tier? That's right, that's right. Aren't king tiers invincible among their peers? That person called Ling Han is only at the peak stage of the third severance, one minor level lower than Tang Feng, yet he was able to defeat the latter in a single move. To say that Tang Feng is a king tier of the present age, isn't that a joke? It must be someone with the same name. A considerable number stubbornly believed that this Tang Feng was not that Tang Feng, but some people looked stunned. They were sure that this Tang Feng was the holy son of the Green Cauldron sect. What exactly was Ling Han's background? How could he be so ferocious? Brother. Shan Tianwu called out to his elder brother, his expression filled with suspicion. He was also one of those who did not know Tang Feng. Seeing that Tang Feng had been defeated in a single move, he was naturally extremely disdainful. What kind of king tier is this? Pay. He had waited so long for nothing, waiting for Ling Han to suffer a crushing defeat, yet the result was exactly the opposite. But Shan Tianjio's slap landed on his younger brother's face with great force, causing him to spit out a few broken teeth. Why did you hit me? Because he was already used to Shan Tianjio's tyranny, Shan Tianwu actually did not show any anger, and only asked very aggrievedly, "Why did you hit me? What was wrong with him? He had not done anything. Don't provoke this guy anymore." Though Shan Tianjio hated him for not striving, this idiot was his own younger brother. But Shan Tianwu's eyes widened. This person is very likely the heir of a celestial king tier level sect. Shan Tianjio had no choice but to explain lest this idiot younger brother of his would not give up and cause more trouble. If Shan Tianwu were to talk about king tiers, emperor tiers, and monarch tiers, he would not have any concept, but when it came to celestial king tier level sects, he immediately understood. Because he knew that the clans in the upper two levels were people he definitely could not provoke, and that was only immortal palace tier and ascending origin tier. If it was celestial king tier level, Shan Tianwu couldn't help but shiver. In truth, he was really just a profligate young master. Indeed, he was very arrogant, but not stupid at all. Brother, are you sure? He was still a little unwilling to give up. Could it be that my judgment is inferior to yours? Shan Tianjio couldn't help but feel slightly annoyed. When was it your turn to question me? Only then did Shan Tianwu mumble in agreement, and dare not make another sound. From now on, do not have any further connection with him. Shan Tianjio stared at Ling Han for a while, and then closed his eyes. After today was over, he would bring his younger brother back to the third level. And over at Cheng Fengyun's side, the atmosphere was unusually strange. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Cheng Fengyun, feeling that this guy was a little jinx. Whoever he had treated well yesterday would definitely be unlucky, and it was the same today. He was practically a god of misfortune. Cough. Someone deliberately coughed, aiming at the bottom of Cheng Fengyun's behind. He was naturally not interested in Cheng Fengyun's behind, but rather was reminding the latter not to forget the wager they had made previously. Cheng Fengyun's expression was livid, his hands tightly gripping the armrests of the stone chair. He was almost about to spit fire. He really did not have the slightest bit of enmity with Ling Han, but having been slapped twice in the face by Ling Han in a row, he now hated Ling Han. Speaking of which, this enmity with Ling Han was definitely baffling and extremely innocent, but this also proved that he indeed had the aura of mockery on, and could draw hatred even with this. "I'll eat." Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth. If he had made a wager, he was willing to accept his loss. His gambling behavior was still relatively good, but he had forgotten that the other person had not used anything to wager with him at all, so there was no benefit for him even if he won. Tang Feng dejectedly left the arena, while Ling Han advanced to the next round. This caused a great many people to be greatly taken aback, and also caused Ling Han to truly enter the sights of a great many people. Some people shone with boundless brilliance. No matter how much they hid their brilliance, it would eventually be revealed and dazzle the world. When Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden left the arena, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised because he actually did not see Shan Tianjiu and his brother. Strange, didn't they agree to deal with him? Or were they? Ling Han naturally would not wait for them. With a smile, he swaggered off with the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They would fight another day. The two of them returned to their lodgings, yet saw a great many people arriving one after another. They all represented different clans and wanted to recruit Ling Han. Furthermore, it was not just forces from Alchemy City. There were also forces from other places. Chapter 1870. Even though many forces offered generous conditions, Ling Han did not agree to any of them. What a joke! So what if he became the holy son of some force? These were only 2-star forces and 3-star forces, and their influence was too low. Only Alchemy City's influence was large enough. Didn't it say that at least 40% of the alchemical pills of the entire celestial realm came from Alchemy City? Then the eastern celestial realm was almost covered. Becoming the young master of Alchemy City meant that he was at least a heavyweight, so it would be much easier for Commander Guan to know where he was. Taking a step back, crossing the endless seas with such an identity would be much safer. Of course, this would also bring new problems: the Thundercloud Palace and the Zai clan. They clearly would not let Ling Han off. Even if they were wary of the Rock Palace, they might secretly kill him. After all, the celestial realm was so big, and there were countless elites. As long as there was no evidence, who would dare say that they had killed him? Perhaps they would think that this Ling Han was not the real Ling Han, and that the real Ling Han had already gone to the Western Celestial Realm, and this was only a person with the same name. After all, one was a prodigy of martial art, and now suddenly became an alchemy prodigy. This change was too big. How many people would believe that the two were the same person? Ling Han tactfully rejected all the invitations. Some expressed that it was a pity, while others asked Ling Han to reconsider. There were also some who made subtle threats, and Ling Han ignored them. He responded with cold words and chased them out. In Alchemy City, even Dividing Soul Tier and Immortal Palace Tier dared to make a move on him? Ascending Origin Tier might not necessarily be the case. These were great elites that could set the rules, so of course they could also play outside the rules of the game. Who could control them? A night passed, and a new competition day arrived. Ling Han's luck was indescribable. You could say that his luck was bad, but he always encountered precious treasures like the Heavenly Dao Jade and the 9 Heavens Flame. Putting aside when celestial kings were young, even now, they might not necessarily be able to obtain them. But if you said his luck was good, he still had to encounter people like Luo Changfeng and Zai Bingyun, triggering a series of events. This time was no exception. He had a chance to obtain the Dao regulating pill, but the opponent he encountered today was another king tier. Even though this was a 4-star city with countless geniuses, there were not many who could reach the king level. But Ling Han encountered them one after another. What kind of luck was this? Today, his opponent was called Yi Tianhe, the holy son of a 3-star force, Qi Rainbow Sect. Young Master Cheng, why don't you give another review today? Almost the same lineup as the day before and the day before had appeared, and the spectators had their eyes on Cheng Fengyun again. The battle inside the arena was heated, and there was no end to the good show outside. Cheng Fengyun could be considered to be astonishingly resilient. Yesterday, he had already eaten a stone chair, and had even paid for it, but today he actually came again. Who knew if he was born with masochistic tendencies? Wrong. He wanted to get up from where he had fallen. He didn't believe that Ling Han could go all the way to the end. Etienne is the holy son of the Crimson Rainbow sect. Furthermore, his bloodline is extremely powerful. Though he is not a divine fetus, he possesses a powerful special ability, and his abilities are even above Tang Feng's, Cheng Fengyun said. In any case, he just did not like Ling Han. Everyone smiled. You said the same thing yesterday, and the result? Then young Master Cheng still thinks that Ling Han will lose, someone deliberately said, wanting Cheng Fengyun to personally say something definite, and not this kind of review that was only based on ability. Cheng Fengyun gritted his teeth and said, this time, Ling Han will definitely lose. Young Master Cheng, why don't we bet something else? There would always be someone who wished for the whole world to be in chaos. Cheng Fengyun glared fiercely at that person. What the hell was he betting on? He would not gain anything even if he won. Yesterday, he had been careless, and today, he would not suffer this loss again. I bet that Ling Han will win. A pleasant female voice was heard, and a voluptuous woman walked over. Do you dare accept? She looked at Cheng Fengyun. This naturally was the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Yesterday, she had already noticed the situation here, and discovered that Cheng Fengyun was still stubbornly clinging to her husband today, so she was naturally slightly angered. Cheng Fengyun's heart swayed slightly. There were not many in Alchemy City who were as exquisite as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. They were either kept as mistresses by great elites, or married to young masters of great clans. There was no chance for him at all. All right, what are we betting on? His fighting spirit was instantly aroused. If I win, you slap yourself 10 times, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden said. A sliver of anger flashed across Cheng Fengyun's face. A mere Genesis tear actually dared to challenge him? Did she think that she could have no qualms just because she was slightly good-looking? He humphed and said, if I win, I will slap you 10 times. He would first slap her until she felt pain, and only then would he gently knead her with his next few slaps, taking advantage of her. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was displeased. She knew what the other was planning. However, the bet that both sides had made was 10 slaps, and from this aspect, the other was not going overboard. Thus, she nodded and said, all right. She was naturally filled with confidence in Ling Han. To say nothing of a mere king tier, even emperor tiers had been killed by Ling Han. The spectators were naturally even more interested. A bet, and with the addition of a beautiful woman, they were instantly excited. In the arena, Etienne strode into the ring of battle. He was dressed in a silver-white warrior's robe, which made his figure appear especially slender. His appearance was also incredibly handsome, causing others to be envious and jealous. His talent in martial art was already so high, and he was also ridiculously handsome. How could others live? He looked at Ling Han, and after a while, he said, I saw you fight yesterday. How was it? Ling Han asked smilingly. Very strong. Etienne nodded solemnly. However, I have never had the habit of retreating without a fight. Battling with an elite like you might be able to push me to become even stronger. Ling Han still smiled. He did not say that there was actually no gain at all from battling with a character of the other's level, and the other had not provoked him, so there was no pleasure in trampling on him. Then he'd just get rid of him as soon as possible. Perhaps there would be powerful opponents appearing in the 4th level, and he, too, wanted to experience them. I hope you will not disappoint me, Etienne said. He began to accumulate power. Boom, a heavenly river surged out from the top of his head, charging straight into the horizon. The sound of water rumbled, and it was as if the great Tao had appeared. I am the heavenly river ruler. After a few breaths, Etienne said loudly. His entire body was entwined with water regulations, and his feet stepped on the river as he soared into the air, as if he had transformed into a god within the great river. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, Come. A trident appeared in Etienne's hand, which was formed from water regulations. He held it with both hands, and the river beneath his feet surged, bringing him swiftly towards Ling Han. Then he raised the trident and stabbed out. Boom, all the water surged, transforming into the power of the trident, which surged towards Ling Han. It was shockingly frightening. Ling Han stretched out his hand, grabbing towards the trident. "How dare you?" Etienne roared furiously. "You actually dare to look down on me like this? You are too arrogant. Then you shall pay the price." The river beneath his feet transformed into two beasts with jade water eyes. As their 8 hooves moved, they became even faster, and the tip of the trident stabbed out. These were formed from regulations, and their destructive power was boundless. Ling Han only acted as if he had not seen it, and his right hand descended. Pa, he grabbed onto the trident. Explode! Etienne roared loudly, and water regulations surged, intending to forcefully shatter Ling Han's hand. Ling Han smiled. Boom, he began to release flames, and the sky was filled with them. Chapter 1872. Cheng Fingyun's mouth gaped wide enough to stuff an egg in. "What the hell? Aren't you the holy daughter of the purity sect? Aren't you a supreme freak that only appears once in a billion years? Fuck, directly admitting defeat without even fighting. Referee, I want to report this. There's something fishy going on here." Even though Cheng Fingyun's mind was extremely active, he could not say a single word. What could he say? The rules of the tournament did not say that one could not voluntarily admit defeat. Could it be that he could still forcibly press down on bewitching Maiden Ro's head and fight with Ling Han? He was going to run naked, He instinctively felt his vision darken. Whether it was a stone or a slap to the face, he could accept both, but running naked, hanging himself in public, was really too much for him to bear. But the problem was that he had boasted these words himself. Fine, he had brought this upon himself. He looked around, and saw that everyone in the surroundings was looking at him smilingly. "I'll strip," he called out loudly. Young Master Cheng's gambling behavior was very good. After exiting the arena, bewitching Maiden Ro caught up to him. "Brother Ling, why didn't you go to the Rock Palace?" This bewitching maiden was extremely flirtatious. She was clearly talking about serious matters, but she gave off a feeling as if she was whispering by his ear in bed, and thoughts of lust rose up in his mind. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden became very wary. She was not the empress, who had the confidence to look down on the world. She was only a little woman, and definitely did not wish for Ling Han to find other women. Thus, she maintained a strong aversion towards bewitching Maiden Ro, and did not wish for her to get too close to Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. It's a long story. He did not want to mention his own bad luck. He had encountered the battle of 2 great elites on his way, and was unwittingly affected. He had even been planted with the blood murderous curse by the old demon Blood Shadow. Oh! Bewitching Maiden Ro was slightly displeased. "Why are you always so cold and indifferent towards me? Did I provoke you? Damn man, detestable." She cursed internally, but the smile on her face was even sweeter and more alluring. The cultivation technique of the purity sect was like this. No matter how vicious you were towards me, I would still have to smile sweetly. Otherwise, this cultivation technique would not be able to be used. Unfortunately, this kind of charm technique was completely useless against Ling Han. He waved a hand and swaggered off. Bewitching Maiden Ro could only stomp her feet in frustration. This was the first time she had encountered someone who was completely unaffected by her charm, and she was completely helpless. The next day, Ling Han faced his last opponent on the first floor. It was a man named Shu. He didn't have a surname, or maybe it wasn't even a name, but a code name. This person looked ordinary, and he had stumbled along the way. He had barely defeated any of his opponents, but the key was that no matter how strong his opponents were, he would always emerge victorious. Ling Han stood face to face with him. He was not tall and had an ordinary appearance. He belonged to the type that would not attract attention in a crowd. Moreover, there was not the slightest bit of aura circulating around his body. He really was like an ordinary person. Just based on this point alone, he was already extraordinary. To be able to control the aura within one's body so that not even a drop of water could leak out, this was the performance of a supreme expert. Young Master Cheng. On the stage, everyone once again looked towards Cheng Fengyun. One couldn't help but admire this person. He ate stones, slapped himself, and ran naked in front of everyone. Yet, he was still able to appear on time. There was no one else with such tenacity. Cheng Fengyun shook his head repeatedly. Even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't comment today. Today, he just wanted to be a quiet, handsome man. Everyone couldn't help but feel disappointed. There was less joy in this. In the arena, Ling Han made an inviting gesture and said, "Make your move." He did not underestimate his opponent. To be able to charge all the way into the top 8, there definitely could not be a weakling. Perhaps he was just as powerful as he was. Shu stared at Ling Han and cracked a grin. However, this grin was terrifying. He actually did not have any teeth, nor did he have a tongue. Shockingly, there was a dead human face in his mouth, and he was also smiling tragically at Ling Han. Even someone as daring as Ling Han couldn't help but feel his heart tremble, and a chill rose up in his body. Just at this moment, Bede's figure flashed, and he was already charging towards Ling Han. He raised his right hand, and a slender sword appeared in his hand. This really was a slender sword, not much thicker than a hair. With a flash of cold light, shio, it pierced towards Ling Han. His speed was too fast. In an instant he had pierced out countless times. It was clearly only a slender sword, but because of its speed being too fast, it was as if a rain of swords had descended. Even space itself was forcibly pierced into pieces, and the power of regulation was in chaos. So powerful. Cheng Fengyun was dumbfounded, and instantly felt incredibly regretful. Fuck, why hadn't he made a bet that he could win today? He really wanted to beat his head and stamp his feet. He had been holding it in for quite a few days. Even in his dreams, he had imagined that Ling Han would lose, and then he would give some pointers and vent the gloom in his heart, but when the chance had come, he had actually missed it. Everyone was dazzled. Who could believe that such an unprepossessing person could actually explode with such battle prowess? Ling Han actually did not have the slightest ability to retaliate in front of his opponent. But Shu did not look the slightest bit smug. Others might not know, but he was very clear. It seemed as if Ling Han had taken innumerable blows, but not a single one had actually managed to pierce through Ling Han's body. His opponent was truly powerful. The power of regulation protected his body, as if wrapped around by the great Tao. No matter how he attacked, it was completely ineffective. Just at this moment, Ling Han suddenly moved slightly and charged towards him. Shu couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He hurriedly shot back and retreated. This opponent gave him the feeling that he was a tall mountain. If he did not move, he could still be impudent for a while, but once he counterattacked, then the mountains would collapse and the earth would crack, toppling mountains and overturning seas. Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "Your strength is not bad. Among the opponents that I have encountered these few days, you can be ranked first." This person had battle prowess close to Emperor tiers. Even if he encountered the likes of Zai Bingyun and Luo Changfeng, he would still be able to exchange a few blows with them. Unfortunately, his opponent was him. Ling Han moved. His 5 fingers stretched out and pressed down toward Shu. His palm had not arrived, but his aura was already as heavy as 10,000 mountains, pressing down on Shu so hard that cold sweat poured down his forehead. He felt as if his heart was about to shatter. He wanted to dodge, but it was as if his legs were filled with lead, and he could not move at all. However, he was an existence close to Emperor tiers, after all. Shu released a battle cry and broke free of Ling Han's spiritual suppression. He once again brandished his sword in an attack. Even if he was defeated, he would be defeated in battle. Boom! In the exchange of blows, Shu was sent flying. With a pa, he crashed onto the ground and was unable to get back up. On the platform, there was once again silence. At first, everyone had thought that Ling Han was definitely going to lose, but they had never imagined that they had not even processed this thought when Ling Han had already turned defeat into victory. This kind of reversal was really too fast. Meanwhile, Cheng Fengyun secretly rejoiced and felt a lingering fear. Thankfully, he had not made a bet today. Otherwise, he would have to wait until they reached the 4th level, and let the freaks their deal with Ling Han. After the end of this day, the top 4 of the 1st level had all been decided. They were Ling Han, Zhang Quan Hiyu, and Yang Biu. Aside from Ling Han, the other 3 were all heirs of 3-star forces and had the aptitude of king tiers. Otherwise, they could not possibly have won in such an intense competition. They did not return to their original places. Instead, they were gathered together and were about to head to the 4th level immediately. Tomorrow, the competition for the final rounds would begin. Ling Han was also very expectant. The 4th level had even better time cultivation chambers, and he wanted to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills as soon as possible. Once he had concocted them, he could use them as a stepping stone and open the door to the inner part of Alchemy City. Chapter 1873. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden went to the 4th level through the transfer formation. As the winners of the competition, they still had a small privilege. They were allowed to bring 1 or 2 people into the 4th level, but this was only for the duration of the competition. After the competition, they had to leave within 3 days. Those who wanted to spectate the competition were not so lucky and could only pay to take the transfer formation. No need. The space of each level was so big, so would you be able to reach it in time? This transfer formation cost 1-star stone each time, and they could not stay on the 4th level. They had to return on the same day they came, so going back and forth would cost 2-star stones. Apparently, alchemist Zicheng also had a share of the income from the transfer formation. He really knew how to earn money. After arriving at the 4th level, Ling Han and the others were arranged to stay. They would only stay here for 4 days at most. Additionally, the winners of the 2nd and 3rd levels were also staying here. They were basically the natives of the city, and they could directly return after the competition was over. The winners of the 4th level were not here, and would only appear during the competition the next day. However, in the middle of the night, a terrifying aura swept out, causing the 12 winners of this manner to immediately be startled awake. So powerful! They all opened the doors, and saw a man standing impressively in the sky. He was like a god, exuding a domineering aura. Zhao Qingfeng. Someone recognized this person and called out his identity, but his voice was actually trembling. Being able to enter the final rounds, which one of them did not have the talent of king tiers. However, they actually trembled at the mention of a name, which showed how terrifying Zhao Qingfeng's ferocity and strength were. Zhao Qingfeng. Obviously, there were many people who had heard of him. The other king tiers also frowned, revealing expressions of wariness. According to the rumors, Zhao Qingfeng was not only ridiculously powerful, but also cruel, and had a hobby of torturing and killing prodigies. They definitely should not be targeted by him, or they would have to pray for their own good after leaving Alchemy City. Zhao Qingfeng clasped his hands behind his back, and looked down at them from above, his eyes filled with strong disdain. A bunch of trash, really trash, not even interested in making me move. Everyone couldn't help but become furious. Which one of them wasn't a king tier? 1 or 2 of them had even barely reached the emperor tier. Yet you actually said that they were trash and trash. Who could endure this? I can't accept it. Zhao Qingfeng snickered. He stretched out a hand and pressed down. Xiu 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 xiu. Countless streaks of green light descended from the sky. Those were green swords formed from the runes of the great Tao, and they fell from the sky. It was as if the great Tao of the heavens was suppressing down, shockingly terrifying. Everyone hurriedly attacked. Peng, peng, peng. The entire manor was destroyed in an instant. When the smoke and dust dispersed, most of the people were lying on the ground. Even if there were a few who were not lying down, they were injured. A casual attack was able to injure over a dozen kings and even emperors. What kind of terrifying strength was this? This is Zhao Qingfeng. What was more frightening was that he was clearly already so strong, yet he was only one of the 4 heavenly kings under Yan Xianlu, and Yan Xianlu himself wasn't even the heir of a 9th heaven celestial king. I've already said that you all are trash, Zhao Qingfeng said with a scoff. I've come here this time to tell you all not to waste my time. Tomorrow, there is only one battle. His eyes were fixed on the only person who was still standing and unscathed. Ling Han. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had already been drawn into the Black Tower by Ling Han. Ling Han, Zhao Qingfeng said calmly. 2 balls of fire danced in his eyes. That was a blazing fighting spirit. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The other actually knew his name. The two looked at the other. Though he was looking up at him, there was a sense of pride in him. In terms of aura, he was not the slightest bit inferior. That's right, I am Ling Han, he said calmly. This Zhao Qingfeng was really very strong. Perhaps he was even stronger than he had been before he had been tempered by the flames of a celestial king, but now, Ling Han had absolute confidence. Ling Han did not dare to underestimate the prodigies of the world, but he was similarly filled with confidence. Zhao Qingfeng grinned and said, "You are very interesting. Tomorrow is the battle between you and me." Was this reasonable? There were a total of 16 people who had entered into the final rounds. 8 would advance, 4 would advance, and 2 would advance, and only then would they be able to battle again. You directly skipped 3 days of battle. Aren't you afraid that alchemist Zicheng would seek you out for revenge? Though Ling Han had not seen this alchemist before, he could already confirm that he was definitely an old money grubber. He will see, Ling Han said indifferently. Whether he had to fight his way to the final step by step, or fight immediately, he was unafraid. Zhao Qingfeng's eyes swept over them, and he said, "If you all do not voluntarily withdraw from the competition tomorrow, then none of you can think of returning alive. I, Zhao Qingfeng, am a man of my words." Arrogant enough, domineering enough, arrogant enough, but he was also strong enough. Everyone fell silent. At first, some people still held a sliver of hope, but previously, they had been easily defeated by Zhao Qingfeng, so they naturally had completely lost their confidence. In any case, they could not possibly win, so what difference did it make if they withdrew earlier or later? They could not afford to offend Zhao Qingfeng. The one who was even more unlucky was Ling Han. Now that he had been targeted by Zhao Qingfeng, he would definitely be tortured to death tomorrow. Ling Han, I look forward to the battle tomorrow. Definitely do not disappoint me or else. Zhao Qingfeng only cast a deep look at Ling Han, waved his hand, and swaggered off. This arrogance had reached a certain level. Ling Han propped up his chin in self-reflection. Had he been too low-key? You, Zhao Qingfeng, were only the subordinate of a holy son, yet could be arrogant to such an extent in Alchemy City. Tomorrow he would crush this guy. Ling Han had already made his decision. No matter how freakish or prodigy Yan Xianlu was, that was a matter for the future. Right now, he was definitely displeased with Zhao Qingfeng. If he did not crush the latter, he would not be able to suppress his anger. The manor had been flattened, but the other 15 did not plan to continue the competition either. They did not mind. Some immediately left, while others were unwilling to give up and placed their bets on Ling Han. They hoped that Ling Han would put on a great comeback and suppress Zhao Qingfeng. In the end, this night still passed. The next morning, Ling Han and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden set out, heading towards the arena here. It was very close. What? The other participants have all withdrawn, and now there are only 2 people left? In the arena, a manager couldn't help but wipe at his sweat when he heard the report of his subordinate. The tickets had all been sold, but this kind of monster had actually appeared. Zhao Qingfeng. He gritted his teeth. Would you die if you fought a few more battles? You actually went to threaten the other participants, making them withdraw from the competition of their own accord. Thankfully, there was at least one person left. Otherwise, after struggling for 10 days to half a month, if the finals ended without any results, that would really be too much of a joke. There's no other way. We can only directly enter the finals, this manager said with a sigh. Though Zhao Qingfeng was despicable, who would really dare reprimand him? He was someone that had walked out from an 8th heaven celestial king tier force, so even a hair that fell from him was incredibly valuable. Furthermore, he was Yan Xianlu's follower. As the saying went, even if you beat a dog, you had to find its master. That was a supreme talent that would definitely become a celestial king. Who would dare offend him? Hopefully this Ling Han can work hard and teach Zhao Qingfeng a good lesson, this manager said. Then he shook his head. This was impossible. Even the holy son of a celestial king tier force had been easily defeated by Zhao Qingfeng, so how could Ling Han possibly be nature-defying? Chapter 1874. On the stage, when the host announced that the finals would begin today, the entire arena was in an uproar. What the hell is going on? Wasn't it supposed to be 4 days in a row? Why did it shrink to 1 day? Did you guys do this internally? The others fought hard all the way up, but in the end, they were inexplicably disqualified. But the host also said that the other contestants had withdrawn from the competition of their own accord. They couldn't press their heads and force them to fight, right? So, whether you like it or not, you have to accept the result. There was only one match, Ling Han versus Zhao Qingfeng. Ling Han, Lu Xianming murmured. Could it be that person? It couldn't be such a coincidence. Young Master Lu. Sun Dong came over. What's wrong? Lu Xianming shook his head, thinking that the two of them only had the same name. After all, there were too many people in the immortal realms, and it wasn't strange for people to have the same name. Sun Dong prostrated himself in admiration towards Zhao Qingfeng instead. When he said that he would fight in the finals, he would fight in the finals. Everyone else was scared off. He was too domineering. If he were to fight against Ling Han in the finals, that dogfart fellow would definitely be tortured to a pulp by Zhao Qingfeng. After waiting for so many days, the moment of revenge had finally arrived. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun was also elated. Today, Ling Han would definitely lose. Originally, Ling Han could have stayed on this stage for a few more days. But today is the finals, and he's going up against Zhao Qingfeng directly. He'll lose without a doubt. He spoke with fervor and assurance, as if he were Zhao Qingfeng. However, no one fanned the flames today because everyone had heard of Zhao Qingfeng's deeds. Just some time ago, he had directly forced away a few holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier sects, and 3 of the victors of the 4th level had also retreated, all because they were wary of Zhao Qingfeng. This person's strength had already reached the point where he could destroy heaven and earth. No matter how strong Ling Han was, he could only be defeated in front of Zhao Qingfeng. The only suspense was how many moves Ling Han could withstand. 3 moves, 5 moves, 10 moves. You still dare to fight? I really admire your courage. After the host blabbered on and on, the highly anticipated final was finally about to begin. The contestants from both sides stepped onto the stage. Yes. Lu Xianming immediately revealed a surprised expression. He had arrived at Ling Han. Damn, it's really that guy. He couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. The world was too small. Not even a year had passed, and he had run into Ling Han again. Lu Xianming immediately said in his heart. He couldn't let Ling Han die in Zhao Qingfeng's hands. Firstly, he still owed Zhao Qingfeng his life. Secondly, Ling Han's strength was also very strong. He needed such a helper. Yes, after Ling Han was defeated, he would step forward to stop the battle. With his status, Zhao Qingfeng would have to give him some face no matter what. This way, not only would he be able to repay Ling Han's favor, but he would also be able to take the opportunity to recruit him. This is wonderful. Sun Dong didn't notice the changes in Lu Xianming's expression. After he arrived at Ling Han, his mind was filled with the tragic scene of his chrysanthemum being penetrated, and he wished for nothing more than to eat Ling Han's flesh and drink his blood. Begin. The MC waved his hand and left the stage to these 2 young prodigies. Zhao Qingfeng stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He stared at Ling Han and said, "Not bad, at least you have some courage. I had thought that you would also have to be a coward." Ling Han chuckled and said, "If I leave, who will beat you into smithereens? Your courage is commendable. I hope your strength will not disappoint me." Zhao Qingfeng was not angered and instead laughed loudly. He was afraid that Ling Han wasn't strong enough and couldn't give him a strong enough stimulation to fully unleash his potential. The longer he stayed at the 4th severance, the lower the possibility of breaking through to the 5th severance. The accumulation of time was completely useless, and would instead only have the opposite effect. Ling Han said, "I also hope that you can be a little stronger. Otherwise, trampling on a weakling is very meaningless." Arrogant, but completely meaningless. Zhao Qingfeng raised his right hand, and an azure circle of light appeared on his palm. Then, an azure sword floated out of the azure circle and was grasped in his hand. Zhao Qingfeng showed a cruel expression. For the sake of this delicious meal, he had already waited for a very long time, and now he couldn't wait to enjoy it. Brutally killing a prodigy whose strength was close to his own would endlessly stimulate his martial art heart. That's right, he cultivated the regulations of slaughter. Of all the kings in the world, Qingfeng is the strongest. Zhao Qingfeng said calmly, but there was indescribable pride in his tone. Ling Han was astonished. This person was really shameless. Of all the kings in the world, you actually dared to claim to be the strongest? Where did you get such courage? It should be known that even Yan Xianlu wasn't qualified to be called the strongest. What more you? He couldn't help but laugh, and even shook his head. You dare make fun of me? Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly. He raised the azure sword in his hand and delivered a slash at Ling Han. Shua, a flash of sword chi surged, turning into a 30,000-meter-long bolt that ruthlessly slashed at Ling Han. He was arrogant, but his strength was indeed strong. This strike had condensed supreme Tao, and it was as if it could split the heavens and split the earth. As expected of a prodigy of the Eternal Prosperity sect. On the platform, a few powerful figures were watching the battle. They were all ascending origin tier-level elites, the strongest below Celestial King tier. In their eyes, to say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng and Ling Han, even if Yan Xianlu came, he was only a child. No matter how strong your potential was, that was a matter for the future. How could a severing mundane tier possibly attract the attention of an ascending origin tier? Battle prowess is indeed strong. The powerful figures made their evaluation. This brat has already cultivated the severing mundane tier to perfection. I don't believe that with his talent, he can't break through to the dividing soul tier. Could it be? These powerful figures could see a sliver of shock in each other's eyes. They thought of a legend, and it really was only a legend. At least, they had never heard of anyone successfully achieving it. Above the fourth severance, there was still the fifth severance. Regardless of which Celestial King tier sect this boy went to, he would be qualified to become a holy son, yet he just had to become Yan Xianlu's follower. Perhaps it was for the sake of completing the fifth severance. These powerful figures speculated, and they all showed expressions of admiration. Even they were slightly stunned by Zhao Qingfeng's decisiveness. However, this time, old man Zicheng will definitely stomp his feet in fury. He's earned a lot less for no reason, a shorty with countless braids suddenly said with a smile. Haha. The other powerful figures also laughed loudly. When they thought of alchemist Zicheng's greedy appearance, they really looked forward to the expression on his face when he received the news. Amidst the laughter of these powerful figures, this flash of sword chi that Zhao Qingfeng had shot out also blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han shot out a fist. Ping, regulations of flames entwined around his hand, and it smashed onto the sword chi. The sword chi instantly crumbled, but Ling Han was also sent flying back under this kind of impact. He kept retreating until he reached the edge of the arena, and only then was he blocked by the wall behind him. With a purng, even the wall shook when he crashed into it. What a frightening strike. Just a casual strike, and it possessed such might. Ling Han frowned slightly. He was not inferior to the other in terms of talent, but rather because there was a gap of a minor level, third severance versus fourth severance, and added with the fact that Zhao Qingfeng was also close to monarch tier, he was at a disadvantage. Fun, let's battle. Chapter 1876. On the stage, a wave of cheers instantly rang out. For ordinary spectators, they did not care who won or lost. As long as they could watch an exciting battle, they would be satisfied. After spending so much money, what they wanted was to see blood and flesh splatter everywhere. Now that Ling Han had finally seen blood, it naturally caused them to instantly reach a climax. Kill, kill, kill. Some people roared with bloodshot eyes. That madness was not inferior to Zhao Qingfeng's. Sun Dong was also one of them. As he shouted, he was still waving his arms. Pa, Lu Xianming immediately delivered a slap. Sun Dong spun in a circle on the spot. Then he was dumbfounded and asked blankly, "Holy Sun, why did you hit me?" He looked very aggrieved. Lu Xianming humphed. As a superior, did he need to give an explanation to his subordinates? You don't know how to read people's expressions, and you still want to be my trusted aide? Idiot. Though Sun Dong liked women by nature, he was very smart. When he discovered that Lu Xianming was showing strong displeasure, he hurriedly started to apologize in a low voice. As for why, that could be discussed later. On the other side, Cheng Fengyun was even more excited. Because of Ling Han, he had suffered who knew how much. The great young master of the Cheng family actually repeatedly ate rocks, slapped himself, and even ran naked. How could he endure this? He had held it in for 10 days, and it exploded in an instant. It naturally made him feel extremely good. "Kill Zhao Qingfeng, kill!" he roared, his face completely red. The veins on his skin were all bulging, and it was very possible that his heart would explode from being too agitated. Bewitching Maiden Ro was even more nervous, thinking, why hasn't this idiot admitted defeat? Does he have to be beaten to death? What are you trying to show off for? To say nothing of her, even the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was a little uncertain. Though she was very clear about Ling Han's strength, Zhao Qingfeng's battle prowess was too fierce, and he had indeed wounded Ling Han with a single strike. She couldn't help but worry, her pretty face showing anxiety. "Brother, this brat can't hold on any longer," Shan Tianwu said excitedly. Under his brother's tyrannical might, he did not dare to make a move on Ling Han, but that did not mean that he did not hate Ling Han. Now that Ling Han was injured, he was excited as if he had been injected with duck blood. Yamada Jiao, on the other hand, was much more reserved. He smiled, but in his heart he felt that everything was reasonable. Zhao Qingfeng was too powerful, and could even instantly defeat the holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier forces. Ling Han was at most a holy son of a celestial king tier force, so he would definitely be unable to withstand a single blow from Zhao Qingfeng. Being able to persist for so long before getting injured was already beyond his expectations. Even those mighty figures nodded in agreement. Zhao Qingfeng's strength had already reached the peak stage of the severing mundane tier, and had even surpassed it. That was because there was a large vacuum between the battle prowess of the severing mundane tier and the dividing soul tier, and Zhao Qingfeng was currently in this vacuum. How could he not be strong? The audience's cheers were earth-shattering. Almost no one here knew Ling Han, so they naturally wouldn't cheer for him. Instead, they leaned towards the strong. "Zhao Qingfeng! Zhao Qingfeng! Zhao Qingfeng!" The audience cheered in unison, and it was as if they wanted to shatter the heavens. Zhao Qingfeng broke into a sinister grin, and raised his sword horizontally, aiming it at Ling Han. "If you can't completely ignite my heart of martial art, what meaning is there for you to live?" He roared loudly and charged towards Ling Han. Scram! Ling Han roared in fury. He brandished his sword to parry the attack. The light of lightning crackled wildly, and there were also flames of fury burning within. He too channeled his divine fetus, and used the regulations of fire. He had a feeling all along that Zhao Qingfeng hadn't used his full strength. Thus, he had only channeled the regulations of lightning from beginning to end, and exchanged blows with the latter. Now that the latter had revealed his trump card, he too began to unleash his true battle prowess. "You want to break through, and I want to as well. Then, let us be the stepping stone for each other." Boom! The two swords clashed, and a flash of light shot out from the clash of the blades. Very quickly, it turned from a small speck of light into a massive ball of light, and then turned into a terrifying explosion that shot out in all directions. Peng, peng, peng. All around the arena, formation patterns lit up one after another, blocking the shockwaves that had gone berserk. Even so, the audience was still in a daze, revealing expressions of absent-mindedness. Too strong, too fucking strong. Was this really the strength that a severing mundane tier should have? What was even more frightening was that Ling Han had actually turned the tables. His whole body was burning with blazing flames, and he was like a sun god, illuminating the world with his light. In this exchange, Ling Han was still at a disadvantage, but it was no longer one-sided. There was a fight to be had. On the arena, the powerful figures all shut their mouths and descended into silence. After a long while, the shorty with braids finally said, "This brat is still only at the peak stage of the third severance." Ling Han's strength naturally wouldn't be taken seriously by these powerful figures, but the problem was this. A peak stage of the third severance actually stepped into the vacuum between the severing mundane tier and the dividing soul tier. This was too exaggerated. Then when you advanced into the fourth severance, could it be that you could match a dividing soul tier? Matching a dividing soul tier is impossible. Even Yen Xianlu couldn't possibly battle a dividing soul tier at the fourth severance and could only defeat all severing mundane tiers, a powerful figure said. Unless he can advance into the fifth severance, a few powerful figures said at the same time. But when they said this, they all shook their heads. This was a possibility that was infinitely close to zero. Hee, since you guys don't like this little brat, then I'll take him as a disciple, the shorty with braids said. Old geezer who, the level of battle prowess is one thing, but what does it matter if you take him as a disciple this time? A tall elder hurriedly stomped his foot. This brat, I'm also interested in taking him as a disciple. I don't want to take him as a disciple, but I do want to marry into his family. Another powerful figure said. Suddenly, these powerful figures were already flushed with anger as they argued. Now this is a little interesting. Zhao Qingfeng was not shocked by Ling Han's powerful counterattack, but instead looked delighted. Only when Ling Han was strong enough would he be able to completely stimulate his murderous heart. Die! He laughed wildly as he charged over, his sword brandishing out millions and millions of flashes of sword chi that filled the entire arena. This was his sword chi domain. Because he was a metal element divine fetus, he was naturally close to metal element and could control it at will. Now, the metal element of heaven and earth had turned into sword chi, and added with his control of regulations at the peak stage of the fourth severance, this destructive power was unimaginable. Shua, all the sword chi shot out in unison, wanting to turn Ling Han into a hornet's nest. Xiao, the sword chi descended, forming a massive ball of swords that completely engulfed Ling Han. Is he dead? On the arena, everyone held their breath. This kind of battle was really too intense, too exciting, so they even forgot to breathe. Boom! A burst of flames burned fiercely from within the ball of swords, melting the ball of swords. Ling Han stood proudly, not the slightest bit injured. Gasp! The spectators all exclaimed in shock. This was too strong, wasn't it? Who exactly was this Ling Han? Could it be that he was the holy son of some celestial king tier-level sect, and had deliberately concealed his identity? Yet Zhao Qingfeng only laughed madly, his figure flying over, brandishing his sword in a swift slash. His murderous heart was currently burning fiercely. Ling Han's strength had already caused his killing intent to completely boil, and now he was only waiting for the moment he killed Ling Han so that he could complete his ascension. Chapter 1877. Ling Han gave a battle cry, and brandished his divine demon sword, clashing head-on with Zhao Qingfeng without showing any weakness. Both young elites were extremely dazzling, releasing their brilliance to their heart's content. It was enough to illuminate the galaxy, and would not be extinguished for 10,000 generations. Some holy sons and holy daughters of celestial king tier-level sects had yet to leave, and when they saw this scene, their spirits were all seized, and then they paled in comparison. They could not compare, they really could not compare. Though they, too, had the potential to become emperor tiers, compared to these two people, it was as if one had just started, while the other had already reached the pinnacle. They were not on the same level at all. What was even more unacceptable and unimaginable was that these were actually not the strongest in the severing mundane tier. Firstly, Ling Han was still only at the peak stage of the third severance. When he advanced into the fourth severance, his battle prowess would definitely increase by a great deal. Secondly, Above these two people, there was still an unshakable mountain. Yan Xianlu? And how strong would he be? Ling Han was in high spirits and used the immovable deity metal body mystical power. He formed 6 arms and began to channel even more celestial techniques. Insignificant tricks? Zhao Qingfeng scoffed. Though he was not a holy son, he was stronger than 99% of holy sons and grasped more celestial techniques. His figure swayed, and his whole body suddenly became 10 times larger, and a foot stomped down fiercely on Ling Han. This stomp was like a great bronze mountain crashing down, and what was more astonishing was that there were innumerable symbols flickering on the sole of the foot. That was the most fatal. Is that so? Ling Han smirked coldly and pressed down lightly with one arm. Banish! All of a sudden, Zhao Qingfeng's massive figure disappeared. But it was only an instant, and a massive foot shattered the space, suddenly appearing. Then that tall figure of Zhao Qingfeng appeared. He was clearly only 15 or 18 meters tall, but it was as if he could stand tall between heaven and earth. An iron fist had already shot over, directly attacking Zhao Qingfeng's face. Ling Han had been waiting for him for a long time. Humph! Zhao Qingfeng was not flustered. His head of black hair danced wildly, turning into a sharp sword that pierced towards Ling Han's left eye. If you punch me once, I'll return a sword strike to you. Ling Han did not think of dodging or withdrawing his fist at all. This punch was shot straight out, and he only closed his left eye and slightly tilted his head. Bam! The punch and the sword both landed solidly. This was the first time that Zhao Qingfeng had been hit by Ling Han. Under the explosive impact of this punch, his whole person was forced to retreat a few dozen steps. With every step he retreated, he would leave a deep footprint on the ground. However, this area was protected by an array formation, so it only took an instant for his feet to return to normal. Shockingly, a fist-shaped depression had appeared on Zhao Qingfeng's face. What was strange was that there was no wound on his skin, nor was there any blood flowing out. It was as if he had punched a piece of metal, forcefully dented in. The bronze immortal fetus's defensive power was also very strong. On the other side, the sword pierced towards Ling Han's face, but couldn't pierce through. It could only sweep past, leaving a bloody mark on Ling Han's face, stretching from the corner of his left eye to the right corner of his mouth. Ling Han wiped his hand. There was some blood on his hand. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and the bloody mark on his face instantly faded and recovered. At present, it was unclear who had gained the upper hand in this exchange. My desire to kill you is growing stronger and stronger, Zhao Qingfeng said. The depression on his face slowly swelled up and soon recovered to its original state, but there was still a fist-sized mark left behind. Obviously, his defense couldn't compare to Ling Han's. This was natural. Firstly, he was only a divine fetus, and what level was the indestructible heaven scroll? Secondly, metal element divine fetus was more proficient in offense in the first place, and defense was not his forte. Thirdly, it was mainly because his cultivation level was higher. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have recovered so easily. Ling Han took a deep breath. By now, he had to admit that the other was the strongest opponent he had encountered since entering into the celestial realm. If it was before he had been tempered by the celestial king tier flames, and their cultivation levels were completely the same, it would be hard to say who would win. Now, he was a minor level lower, and could still fight to a draw, which was enough to show the benefits brought about by the tempering of the celestial king tier flames. The improvement it brought to him was really too great. If he couldn't even defeat Zhao Qingfeng, how could he be worthy of being compared to Yan Xianlu? Furthermore, Yan Xianlu might not be the strongest severing mundane tier in the celestial realm. Just bring it on. Ling Han's fighting spirit was boiling. Like the Rain Emperor, he was the type that grew stronger the more he fought. Furthermore, he could draw inspiration from battle and instantly break through. After this battle, his confidence and fighting spirit would definitely rise to a whole new level, and there would be hope for him to break through to the fourth severance. I'll send you on your way. Zhao Qingfeng smirked coldly, stretched out his left hand, and then flipped it over. Murderous shadow. Shio. Countless strands of baleful aura instantly surged out from his palm, transforming into numerous human figures. Every single one of them was exactly the same as Zhao Qingfeng, and even the aura they emitted was no different. At this moment, everyone was stunned. A single Zhao Qingfeng was already so difficult to deal with, and now there were already several dozen Zhao Qingfengs. Wouldn't that mean that he was invincible in the severing mundane tier? It was said that Qingfeng was undefeatable, and it was definitely not an exaggeration. He was truly strong. Ling Han's gaze swept over. The Eye of Truth was already outdated, and he couldn't see any difference between the baleful aura and the main body. However, he did not mind, because he firmly believed that his physique was invincible in the severing mundane tier. Even if he faced a fifth severance, as long as he had advanced into the fourth severance, he would also be qualified to stand against him. If he advanced into the fifth severance, then he could even disregard Yang Soul elites. Come on. Zhao Qingfeng had created a total of 99 doppelgangers. Including his original body, there were exactly 100 of them. He laughed and pointed his sword at Ling Han. The 99 doppelgangers did the same. Absolute slash. He charged towards Ling Han. The baleful aura shot out together, and there was the radiance of the great Tao of metal. This strike was the perfect combination of slaughter regulations and metal regulations. Ling Han smiled calmly and struck out with a hand. Wang, suddenly, a boundless coldness spread. The source power of water was activated. This was the Xianyin source water, celestial king tier level. Merely in terms of level, there was not a single thing or person in this world that could surpass it. 1,000 miles sealed in ice ka. This coldness was too terrifying. It overflowed to the edge of the arena and activated the defensive formation, forming multiple ice flowers on the formation patterns. Originally, the attack of a severing mundane tier was naturally nothing, and could be easily dispersed by the formation, but who asked this to be Ling Han's source power, and the source water of heaven and earth was showing its might? The ice flowers shattered, and actually obliterated a sliver of the formation patterns. Though it was practically indiscernible, it caused the expressions of many great figures to change. You freak. This formation was ascending origin tier level, but a severing mundane tier brat could actually destroy a sliver. Though it was pitifully small, what did this mean? Ling Han had the ability to kill an ascending origin tier elite. Of course, the prerequisite was that the ascending origin tier elite did not resist, and only circulated regulations to protect himself. Then, Ling Han would have to spend an innumerable amount of time to slowly refine these regulations, and then kill the ascending origin tier elite. This was only a theoretical possibility. Whether it was an ascending origin tier elite replenishing their regulations to protect themselves, or a casual strike, they would be able to make Ling Han's efforts go to waste, or kill him instantly. But merely having such a sliver of possibility was already something unimaginable. My heavens, what kind of monster was this? Chapter 1878. Sealed in ice, most of the Zhao Qingfeng's movements slowed down. Only the main body was almost unaffected as it continued to attack Ling Han. However, without the support of the many fiendish shadows, the might of this attack was only esosive. Ling Han slashed out with his sword. Peng Zhao Qingfeng was forced back. Competing in clones? Come! Shouted Ling Han. He activated his core energy, and 3 war beasts walked out of his body. The fire turned into a vermilion bird, the water turned into a green dragon, and the lightning turned into a zhuli. They were all immortal beasts among immortal beasts. Comparatively speaking, the zhuli was much smaller. There was nothing that could be done about it. The lightning origin source was not qualified to be compared to the origin source formed by the 9 heavens flame and the Xianyin source water. The 3 battle beasts appeared and immediately roared in unison, emitting an aura that could suppress the ancient heavens. On the heavens stage, someone was hugging his head as he trembled uncontrollably. Is this really just an illusory beast? Why does it feel like it can instantly kill me with one move? Me too, someone said with a trembling voice. When the 3 battle beasts appeared, at least 99% of the severing mundane tiers trembled in fear. Even Emperor Tyr's expressions changed drastically. They all felt an unacceptable sense of humiliation. They still couldn't defeat these three beasts. It was one thing for them to be unable to defeat Ling Han. After all, both he and Zhao Qingfeng were super monsters. However, Ling Han had only used a single technique, yet they were still unable to withstand it. This was something that they could not accept. Zhao Qingfeng finally revealed a serious expression. He had also discovered how powerful these three battle beasts were. It was so powerful that it made him feel a chill, as if he might be killed. However, this chill did not make him afraid at all. Instead, it made him extremely excited. When he went crazy, he only wanted to kill people, whether it was others or himself. Of course, the only reason he was still alive was because he had killed others. Haha. He laughed crazily. Great Tao symbols appeared all over his body, and his battle intent turned tangible as it rushed into the clouds. Condense! He roared, and the 99 fiendish figures once again turned into fiendish energy. Then, they condensed into an enormous human figure. Kill! He charged towards Ling Han, while the evil man charged towards the three beasts. Boom boom boom. Right now, the battle was split into two areas. Ling Han was fighting against Zhao Qingfeng, while the three beasts were fighting against the evil man. The battle on both sides was extremely intense. Blood spurted. Even though Ling Han's physique was extremely tough, his skin was still inevitably cut open. However, his godly bones were tough, so this was only a minor injury. Zhao Qingfeng wasn't much better off. There was a limit to his bronze body's defense, and if he exceeded this limit, he would also be injured. The two peerless heavens favorites were both riddled with scars. They had truly met their match, and it was rare for them to meet an opponent that could allow them to fight with all their might. Of course, he could fight to his heart's content when fighting against a doppelganger, but he wouldn't feel as nervous as if he was hanging on a tightrope. That wasn't good for improving his combat strength. I've found your weakness. Zhao Qingfeng grinned. His sword stabbed out again and again at tricky angles. He wanted to stab through the boneless parts of Ling Han's body and injure Ling Han's internal organs. After fighting for so long, he was naturally clear that the toughness of Ling Han's bones wasn't something he could break, but his skin wasn't so tough. Then, as long as he avoided his bones, he would be able to deal a fatal blow to him. Ling Han only humphed. If the divine body cultivated from the indestructible heaven scroll could be targeted so easily, then what right did it have to be ranked above celestial king tier cultivation techniques? How could it be so easy to injure his internal organs? However, if his flesh and blood were too heavily damaged, it would also cause him a great deal of damage and he couldn't really ignore it. Ling Han, I'm already tired of this. Zhao Qingfeng said loudly. His bronze-like body exuded a dazzling light. His fighting spirit had already been ignited to the extreme. This state couldn't be maintained for long. He needed to immediately kill Ling Han and then obtain a breakthrough in battle. Heavens will guillotine, he shouted softly. Hong, his whole person disappeared, and what replaced him was actually a gigantic bronze guillotine. The hilt of the guillotine was shockingly connected to his neck and head. Wang, an indescribable aura swept over. Ling Han felt as if his body had been fixed in place, and an indescribable reverence rose up in the depths of his heart. It was as if this guillotine was enforcing the law on behalf of the heavens, and he could only accept its punishment willingly. The bronze guillotine flew over, and Zhao Qingfeng said proudly, I am the will of heaven. This was his strongest secret technique, the strongest attack that could draw upon his divine fetus. No matter what kind of genius you were, you would ultimately not be able to escape the judgment of heaven's will. Only death awaited. Ling Han's fighting spirit was like a song, and he instantly swept away the negative emotions in his heart. However, the might of this guillotine was indeed frightening, and it could really be close to the level of Yang Soul. So what? The guillotine opened and ruthlessly chopped down at Ling Han. Wang, the regulations of the great Tao rippled, and celestial light flowed. Not good. Lu Xianming immediately stood up. Even with the protection of the formation just now, his spirit had still been affected by the heavens will guillotine, and he actually did not react at the first instant. Only when the guillotine chopped down did he come to his senses. It was over, Ling Han was dead. His expression was filled with shock. Being able to fight evenly with Zhao Qingfeng, how many martial art prodigies like him could one be found with a lantern? But now, he had been slaughtered by Zhao Qingfeng. Sigh, he slowly sat back down. Since he was already dead, it would only be a waste of his emotions to think further. Meanwhile, Sun Dong shouted excitedly. He had finally killed him, and his ass could be comforted. Cheng Fengyun was also incredibly excited. He had made his judgment for so many days, and it had finally come true for once. He was practically about to cry tears of joy. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden were dazed. Though the cheers in the surroundings were like thunder, they could not hear any of it. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was not as confident in Ling Han as the Empress was, after all. Otherwise, the Empress would not be the slightest bit worried. The celestial light dispersed, and that guillotine was still pressed against Ling Han's neck, but it was still unable to sever. However, Zhao Qingfeng's expression was filled with astonishment. This had surpassed his imagination. The strongest attack that had activated his divine fetus contained a sliver of Celestial King regulations, yet it actually still had not severed Ling Han's neck and taken his head. This was inconceivable to the extreme. The cheers in the surroundings suddenly stopped. What was going on? He was not dead? Not only was he not dead, there was not even a drop of blood. Sun Dong was stunned, and Cheng Fengyun was stunned. They even felt like they were going to be tricked again. Ling Han showed a smile and said, "This is your strongest move? Is that all?" He actively channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. To say nothing of Zhao Qingfeng, even if Yan Xianlu came, even if he was a fifth severance, he could not possibly kill Ling Han. At present, Ling Han's defenses were at least in soul level. "You, take a strike from me as well," Ling Han said calmly. The power of his fiery divine fetus was activated. Boom, endless flames burst forth, and it was as if a great explosion had occurred in the whole arena, causing everyone to be blinded, unable to see anything clearly. When the flames dissipated, there was already another person in the arena. That was a tall and big old man, and like an eagle catching a chick, he was carrying a person in his hand. It was precisely Zhao Qingfeng. His limbs were hanging limply, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Chapter 1880. Shimenda was very gloomy. His natural disposition was wanton and unrestrained. Today, on a whim, he found two of his lovers and came to the wilderness, using the sky as his blanket and the ground as his bed, having a threesome without restraint. In the end, they hadn't even started when suddenly, thunderclouds arrived. Someone was undergoing heavenly tribulation. Ordinarily, the heavens had eyes. As long as you didn't make a move, divine lightning wouldn't strike you even if it was close at hand. But after the divine lightning descended, what would happen to the aftermath was not within the scope of the heavens' consideration. Thus, when someone was undergoing heavenly tribulation, it was best to avoid it as much as possible. Unless it was a severing mundane tear undergoing heavenly tribulation, and you were a dividing soul tear, so you could casually stand in the lightning tribulation area. In any case, the aftermath couldn't possibly cause any damage. The problem was that Ling Han and the Empress were both close to Monarch tier, and the heavenly tribulation they were undergoing for the fourth severance was astonishingly terrifying. Shimenda naturally could only drag his two female companions and flee in panic. "Fuck, are you guys doing this on purpose?" After running to a safe area, Shimenda couldn't help but point at the sky and curse. "Isn't I just having sex in the wild? Is there a need for you guys to harm me like this?" However, when his eyes landed on the Empress, a stunned expression instantly appeared on his face. "Fuck, how could there be such a beautiful woman, young master?" The two beauties were acting coquettishly, patting their trembling chests, looking as if they hadn't recovered from their shock, and needed him to calm them down. If it were any other time, Shimenda would definitely have leaned over lecherously, but now, he didn't have the slightest bit of interest. He casually pushed the two women away, and his eyes stared at the Empress, exuding a light like that of a hungry wolf. "This guy. He finally glanced at Ling Han and couldn't help but be surprised. It's that person that defeated Zhao Qingfeng. Instantly, he felt a chill rise from the soles of his feet, and his lust instantly faded. The Shimin clan was very strong and had an immortal palace tier ancestor. In Alchemy City, it could be considered a prestigious clan, but that was all and hadn't reached the level of influence. However, it was rumored that there were a considerable number of powerful figures who had already expressed interest in Ling Han. They wanted to take him as a disciple or as a son-in-law, and so on. In any case, Ling Han was now very popular, extremely popular. It was unwise to offend Ling Han at this juncture. Shiminda was lustful, but he was not stupid at all. Our Shimin clan also wants to recruit this person, but we have no way to compete with those big shots. Shiminda thought to himself, however, they owe me this time. I can make use of this opportunity to befriend them. A friend's wife must not be ridden. Shiminda still understood this principle. Although he was lecherous, but a thief also had his principles. He absolutely would not steal a friend's wife. Regarding this point, all his friends knew. He would wait for Ling Han and the Empress to undergo their heavenly tribulation. When they were done, he would immediately approach them and try to befriend them. But as he spoke, his expression changed. This was a fucking fourth severance tribulation. Were they bullying him because he hadn't endured the fourth severance? When he had endured the tribulation of the fourth severance, he hadn't even possessed 1% of this might. No, it wasn't even 1%. It wasn't even 1%. As expected of the man who defeated Zhao Qingfeng. Hold on, so be it that Ling Han was so strong, but why was this beauty's heavenly tribulation so terrifying as well? He suddenly came to a realization. Heavenly tribulation was actually the best reflection of a person's strength. The stronger the heavenly tribulation, the stronger the person's own strength. Thus, the heavens would appropriately increase the might of tempering. Monster, two monsters. This kind of woman was not someone he could covet at all. Shiminda immediately said in his mind, and no longer dared to have any thoughts about the Empress. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation passed, and the thunderclouds dispersed. Ling Han and the Empress landed on the ground, smiling at each other. Ling Han's gains were even greater. He had also tempered his physique, and had truly reached the height of 3-star pseudo-divine metal. Now, though his battle prowess had still not reached Yang Soul, it would already be very, very difficult for Yang Soul elites to kill him. Even if he refined it with regulations, that would still require years of time. Now, facing Zhao Qingfeng again, Ling Han showed a confident smile. Within 100 moves, he would definitely be able to kill him. Not win, but kill. Ling Han walked towards Shiminda with a smile, and said, "This friend, apologies, I had thought that there was no one here." It's fine. In any case, I'm not injured." Shiminda laughed like a flower. "I haven't congratulated young Master Ling advancing into the fourth severance, and becoming a dividing soul tier is just around the corner." Ling Han was slightly surprised and asked, "You know me?" "Right now, in Alchemy City, who doesn't know young Master Ling?" Shiminda said. This was naturally an exaggeration, but no matter what, flattery never failed. This praise was still very effective on Ling Han. At least, the Empress was very satisfied. No matter how others praised her, respected her, or feared her, she would take it as a matter of course, but if they praised Ling Han, she would be overjoyed. Ling Han chuckled. He naturally would not become complacent just because the other had flattered him, and treat this person as a close friend. "Young Master Ling, why don't you invite me to my humble abode and hold a celebration for you?" Shiminda took the opportunity to suggest. Ling Han shook his head and said, "No need, I still have matters to attend to." He paused, and thinking that he had indeed almost implicated these three people because of the heavenly tribulation, he said, "I am staying at Lu Xianming's now. If you have nothing to do, you can come and visit." All right. Shiminda was slightly disappointed, but when he heard the latter part, he was naturally overjoyed, and hurriedly nodded. Ling Han smiled at the other, took the Empress's slender hand, and returned to Lu Xianming's. When Lu Xianming learned that Ling Han had come out of seclusion, He couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. At first, he had thought that he would have to wait over 10,000 years, and when he discovered that Ling Han had actually successfully broken through to the fourth severance, he was incredibly shocked. It had only been 2 months, and he had actually broken through. What a monster! He had to admit defeat. No wonder he could defeat Zhao Qingfeng. This martial art talent was really freakish to the extreme. Thankfully, he was an alchemist, and no matter how outstanding Ling Han was, he could not possibly shake his position. Lu Xianming wanted to celebrate for Ling Han, but was tactfully declined by Ling Han. He ran out and searched for a time cultivation chamber, wanting to become a celestial-level alchemist in the shortest time possible. At first, there were a great many big shots that wanted to recruit him, but he had just come out of seclusion and then went into seclusion again. There was nothing that could be done, and these people could only wait. This also caused some big shots to be slightly angered. You are a mere severing mundane tier, and you are too arrogant, aren't you? But when they learned that Ling Han had broken through to the fourth severance, the anger of these big shots instantly dissipated. Genius to genius. They immediately revised their original plan and took out more sincere terms to recruit Ling Han. For the time being, Ling Han did not know about these things. He was in the time cultivation chamber, diligently refining alchemical pills. On the fourth level, the effect of time acceleration increased from 20 times to 30 times, but this price was also jaw-dropping. 30 times acceleration shockingly cost 30,000 star stones a day, and even if the people on the first level could come here, there were not many people who could take out the star stones to stay for a day. Ling Han glanced at the Black Tower and asked for 10 days' time. 10 days, and after the acceleration, that would be 300 days' time, which was enough for him to concoct his first cauldron of celestial pills. He began to concoct alchemical pills, and failed several times in a row. On the 5th day in the outside world, which was also more than 150 days in the time cultivation chamber, he finally entered a good state, and the success of his first cauldron of celestial pills was imminent. Ah! He suddenly gave a muffled groan, and his whole body shuddered violently. He suddenly fell to the ground. Ping! The alchemy furnace went out of control, and instantly exploded. Chapter 1881. On Ling Han's forehead, multiple veins popped out. He felt incredibly uncomfortable all over. The black murderous curse had activated. It would activate once a year. Though the normal time had not yet been reached, Ling Han had spent a great deal of his time in the time cultivation chamber, and added with this time, the time limit of a year had already arrived. Because he, too, had not expected that, caught off guard, Ling Han would directly lose control, causing the cauldron to explode. Now, he was not in the mood to care. He only knew that he was curled up on the ground, resisting that indescribable pain. Old Demon Blood Shadow was certain that Ling Han would definitely obediently work for him. That was naturally reasonable, because this pain was really incomparably bone-piercing, surpassing all of Ling Han's experiences in the past. Ling Han gritted his teeth, resisting with all his might. He possessed great willpower and did not yield under such pain. Instead, he sat up cross-legged and directly resisted the black murderous curse. Not only did he want to become a monarch tier, he also wanted to become an invincible overlord among monarch tiers. Thus, no matter what aspect, he had to achieve perfection. Talent, willpower, hard work, not a single one could be lacking. On his body, multiple black veins appeared. That was the black murderous curse activating, wreaking havoc in Ling Han's body. There was one point that old Demon Blood Shadow had deceived Ling Han, and that was that when the black murderous curse fully activated, the pain that Ling Han would suffer would not be more than this. However, once the black murderous curse activated, it would not stop. Instead, it would torment Ling Han for as long as 10,000 years, and only then would it end his life. Saying that it would be 10,000 times more painful when it really activated was only a threat to Ling Han, making him do his best. Cold sweat poured down Ling Han's forehead, but aside from the fact that he was unprepared at the start and released a scream, he did not make another sound after that. He gritted his teeth tightly, observing the circulation of the black murderous curse. It should be known that this was planted by an ascending origin tier elite, so it inevitably contained his Tao. However, ordinary people could not possibly analyze it, and would have long since been tortured to the point of screaming in pain, so how could they have the mood to pay attention? Ling Han had great willpower. He was observing the circulation of the black murderous curse. Then, as long as his strength reached a certain level, he would be able to dissolve the black murderous curse. If he could avoid death once, of course he didn't want to die. This kind of torture lasted for an entire day and night. Ling Han wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead, only to feel that his clothes were drenched in sweat. His spirit was very dispirited, but the toughness of his soul was a little stronger. A smile appeared on his face. Old Demon Blood Shadow would never have thought that not only would this black murderous curse not hasten his death, it would instead have the effect of tempering his spirit. However, Ling Han had no intention of thanking the old man. As long as he had enough strength, he would definitely chop off this old dog's head. He rested for more than 10 days before picking himself up and continuing to refine pills. Under the acceleration of time, 2 months' time passed in the blink of an eye. Ling Han's expression was slightly agitated, and he suddenly roared. Pa, pa, pa. He struck out 3 consecutive palm strikes on the alchemy furnace. The alchemy furnace instantly shattered, but this time, it was not an explosion. Rather, it had really been destroyed by Ling Han's palm strikes. 3 alchemical pills danced in the air as if they had grown wings, flying around in the sky, but because this was a sealed space, they could not possibly escape no matter what. Ling Han laughed and made a grabbing motion in the air. 3 alchemical pills landed in his palm. Pill form. This was called the Purple Moon Soul Suppressing Pill, a 1-star celestial pill that was used by severing mundane tears. Its use was to suppress one's spirit. When cultivating, cultivators would comprehend Great Tao, but Great Tao was boundless, so how could it be easily comprehended? It was very possible that it would turn the tables on them, causing them to lose themselves in Great Tao. This Purple Moon Soul Suppressing Pill could suppress one's spirit, so they would not lose themselves. Because the ratio of celestial medicine used was different as well as the level of alchemy, the Purple Moon Soul Suppressing Pill was also divided into grades, which were low grade, middle grade, high grade, and supreme grade. These 3 Purple Moon Soul Suppressing Pills of mine should be classified as middle grade. Ling Han made his evaluation. This was not an exaggeration, it was indeed so. To be able to reach middle grade on my first attempt, I am indeed impressive. This time, he was a little smug. However, in reality, this was Ling Han's second attempt at pill formation. It was just that when he was about to succeed the first time, he was ambushed by the black murderous curse. However, the experience that he needed to accumulate was still accumulated, and this time, his spirit had become even stronger. Hence, there was a reason why a pill formed once was middle grade. Ling Han used his spirit as a knife, and branded a Han character on the alchemical pill. Every alchemist would leave a mark on their proudest work. Though this couldn't be considered Ling Han's proudest work, it was the first cauldron of celestial pills that he had concocted. Moreover, he had really spent a very, very long time on it. This was worth remembering. Because the deadline of 10 days had not yet passed, Ling Han simply concocted another cauldron of Purple Moon Soul Suppressing Pills, but this time, the quality did not increase, reaching high grade. It was still middle grade. Even if he was the Alchemy Emperor, it was impossible for him to reach the heavens in a single step. He exited the cultivation chamber and returned to where Lu Xianming was. At this time, at least a dozen forces had sent out representatives and were waiting for him. Some wanted to take him as a disciple, and some wanted him as a son-in-law. In short, they all showed great sincerity, wanting to make him one of their own. Ling Han refused all of them. What a joke, wasn't this looking down on him? His goal was to become the future ruler of Alchemy City. Seeing Ling Han refuse them one after another, Lu Xianming thought that Ling Han was doing this for his own sake, and was naturally very satisfied. Ling Han made some inquiries. If one wanted to become an alchemist of Alchemy City, they had to go to the Alchemist Hall to take an examination. The first step was to become a low-level apprentice, then a middle-level apprentice, then a high-level apprentice, and only then would one be qualified to take the examination for an alchemist. The requirement for a high-level apprentice was to be able to concoct level 20 divine pills, and above that would be a 1-star alchemist, which was very reasonable. Ling Han gave an oh. Actually, he could have become a high-level apprentice from the very beginning, but he had thought that he would only be able to knock on the doors of Alchemy City after becoming a 1-star alchemist. He had really thought too much. However, that was fine. He could directly make his debut as a 1-star alchemist now, which would be even more awesome. He ran to the alchemist hall to take the examination. This time, he really kept a very low profile and wholeheartedly wanted to gain the status of an alchemist. Thus, he did not even ask the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to come along. If he could still cause trouble like this, then it really wasn't his fault. There were no delays on the way, and Ling Han very soon arrived at the alchemist hall. This was an incredibly grand and solemn great hall, occupying an area of as much as 10,000 acres, and was indescribably tall. This was one of the signboards of Alchemy City. The truly grand alchemist hall was on the 5th level, and it was 100 times more magnificent than the 4th level. Ling Han stood and raised his head to look up and observe. All the way up, merely the steps were several hundred meters tall, and they were all paved with fine jade, exuding a faint radiance. Ling Han! A voice rang out. A young man stood on the steps, looking down at Ling Han from above. When he saw Ling Han's gaze move over, he walked down the steps. I am Kansas Kan, one of the holy sons of Alchemy City. He was obviously here specifically to stop Ling Han, but why was he doing so? Cell phones read more refreshingly. Chapter 1882. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "What can I do for you, Saint?" With a few steps, Okan had already descended the stairs and arrived by Ling Han's side. He grinned, his 2 rows of teeth white and neat, and said, "You are a very busy man. It is not easy to even see you." Ling Han merely chuckled. This Okan acted as if he was an old friend, but he was not familiar with him at all. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with him, she wasn't even familiar with Lu Xianming. It was just that Lu Xianming was very enthusiastic and she had saved his life once, so she accepted his invitation. His divine sense was sharp, and he discovered that there were at least 4 divine senses locking onto him. However, they were only at the severing mundane tier, so he was naturally completely unafraid. This should be Okan's guard. He himself was only a severing mundane tier. Alchemists did not need to have a very high cultivation level, because the requirement to concoct celestial pills was only the severing mundane tier. If one could break through to this cultivation level, they could even concoct celestials. But in truth, because one's divine sense was not strong enough, it was practically impossible for a severing mundane tier to cultivate into a celestial. At least, such a miracle had never happened before. Generally speaking, severing mundane tiers could at most concoct 2-star celestial pills, and dividing soul tiers could only concoct 3-star celestial pills. It was also because of this that when Alchemy City chose a successor, cultivation level did not need to be the greatest consideration. It was enough if one could advance into the severing mundane tier. With a tremendous amount of alchemical pills that he didn't care about the cost, advancing to the ascending origin tier would not be a dream. Of course, being able to become a high-level alchemist, how could he possibly be an idiot? Thus, ordinarily, the chairperson of Alchemy City would also possess the cultivation level of the ascending origin tier. However, this battle prowess would possibly be at the bottom of the ascending origin tier. It was possible that even if they reached consummate level, they would only be at the level of great accomplishment. No matter what, because Okan's cultivation level was not high, and furthermore, this was Alchemy City, the people he could mobilize were only severing mundane tier. Ling Han, are you interested in working for me? Seeing that Ling Han was expressionless, Okan did not beat around the bush, and got straight to the point. Ling Han shook his head and said bluntly, "Not interested." Okan was given the cold shoulder, and his expression was slightly troubled. For a holy son like him, who had high status and authority, it was really very difficult for others to say no to him. Fortunately, he had good self-restraint and immediately suppressed his dissatisfaction. "Don't you want to hear my offer?" He forced a smile. "No need." Ling Han shook his head. The other party had probably misunderstood. He had no intention of working for Lu Xianming at all. Right now, he was just a guest at the Lu clan. This was Alchemy City, and alchemists were revered. Once a martial artist had a body of skill, wouldn't they all want to sell it to a high-level alchemist so that they wouldn't have to worry about alchemical pills from then on? After advancing into the severing mundane tier, cultivators would not receive the support of celestial medicine, and their cultivation speed would be as slow as the crawl of a tortoise. They could only improve by relying on celestial medicine. After advancing into the severing mundane tier, it was actually also a race against time. Otherwise, if he suffered a few more immortals' tribulations, and his own strength did not increase, he would be forcibly killed by the heaven and earth. That was why alchemists were so aloof. To a certain extent, they held the lives of cultivators in their hands. Okan had been rebuffed twice in a row, and his displeasure finally showed in his words. He said, "Ling Han, don't get carried away. No matter how much of a genius you are only a mere severing mundane tier, and do not have the right to ask for such an exorbitant price." Ling Han sighed. Why had he encountered another idiot? Who had he offended? If he did not agree to your recruitment, then he was arrogant and conceited. Fuck, had he asked for an exorbitant price? Your sister. How could there be such a person who would talk his own way? Ling Han's expression also turned cold and he said, "Go to one side, don't waste my time." Ling Han, Okan raised his voice. "I know that you are only waiting for a good offer. I don't mind telling you, though Lu Xianming is indeed more powerful now, our other holy sons and holy daughters are not to be trifled with either. There are 9 holy sons and holy daughters in Alchemy City, and aside from a few good-for-nothing trash, Okan, Jiaobang, and Qin Guyu are all qualified to fight with Lu Xianming. What more when we have already decided to join forces and kick him out first? You are hugging a huge tree that is destined to wither. Isn't that too stupid? What an idiot! Which ear of yours did you hear, and which eye did you see that I was going to follow Lu Xianming? You shouldn't be so full of yourself." Ling Han shook his head. He was really worried about this person's intelligence. He still wanted to fight for the position of chairperson. Oh, that's right. His target was also to become the chairperson of Alchemy City, or at least to be the heir. Firstly, he wanted to make a name for himself and inform Commander Guan, and secondly, he liked alchemy in the first place, and had the intention of developing here. In that case, whether it was this Okan or Lu Xianming, they were actually both his competitors. Ling Han scratched his head. He had not considered this problem before. As the alchemy emperor, he was too confident in his alchemy. The rest were mediocre, and he really did not take them seriously. Thus, he had never taken Lu Xianming and the other holy sons and holy daughters seriously and viewed them as his competitors. It was just like how the Lion King had ascended to the throne. Did he need to care about a few sheep on the road? Ling Han broke into a smile. Since this was a competitor, then he might as well play with him a little and strike a blow. "Then do you have any suggestions?" he asked. Okan immediately showed an expression of arrogance. He had only slightly revealed some of his trump cards, and this brat had already chickened out. Fawning on those in power, this was his perverted logic. If you did not listen to me, you would be getting carried away with your success, but if you listened to me, you would be fawning on those in power. In any case, he was high and mighty on both sides, and everything was decided by him. I'll give you 2 choices. The first is a bad plan, and you will leave Lu Xianming and get the hell out of Alchemy City. The second is a good plan, and you will join my service, and I will bring you to the pinnacle of your life. Ling Han almost laughed out loud. Why don't you say bring me to show off, and bring me to fly? He shook his head and said, I choose the third. The third? There was no third. Okan's expression turned cold and he said, Oh, you still want to add conditions? Tell me. Ling Han smilingly said, If I become the boss, all you holy sons and holy daughters will come and worship me. Now, this was a joke, but only Ling Han was filled with confidence. In future, he would become the king of Alchemy City, and then whether it was Can, Lu Xianming, or the other holy sons and holy daughters, they would all have to worship him as their master. Ha! Can laughed coldly. This time, he had really been angered. A mere severing mundane tear, so what if you were a genius? This was Alchemy City. Ling Han walked up the stairs and said, "Excuse me." Can had initially wanted to make a move, but when he thought of Ling Han's frightening strength, the hand that he had raised slightly immediately lowered again. If he made a move, he would only be seeking his own humiliation. Furthermore, if a great holy son was beaten, that would naturally be a loss of face. He humphed, flicked his sleeves, and followed up. "Ling Han, then I will show you what kind of authority the holy son of Alchemy City has. You want to buy alchemical pills? Ho, without my permission, who would dare sell them to you?" Was this kind of breadth of mind worthy of being a holy son? Ling Han shook his head internally. In comparison, Lu Xianming was indeed much stronger. No wonder he was the most popular. However, he was not here to buy alchemical pills, and you are already so pleased with yourself. Aren't you afraid that you will fly into a rage out of humiliation later? Speaking of flying into a rage out of humiliation, Ling Han couldn't help but show a smile. Then he would toy with this guy. Chapter 1884. Aren't you here to support this person? The mid-level apprentice didn't understand. Why did he want Ling Han to refine the most difficult pill? However, since the saint had spoken, would he dare to question him? He didn't even dare to ask the reason. He directly said to Ling Han, "Then you can refine the green rainbow pill." Perhaps he was the best at this. Ling Han nodded indifferently. They came to an alchemy room. Ling Han reported his name and then entered, starting his path of alchemy in the celestial realm. Can smirked coldly. He wanted to let Ling Han have his help. With his help, it would not be difficult for him to deal with a low-level or even a high-level trainee. But if he angered him, humph. In the pill room, Ling Han had already begun. He began by sorting out the medicinal ingredients, refining them, opening the furnace, and starting the fire in one go. Amazing! The intermediate apprentice couldn't help but praise. At the very least, he was inferior to Ling Han in terms of these techniques. It was pleasing to the eye, simply a kind of visual appreciation. Can was shocked as well. So it turned out that Ling Han really knew alchemy. He had originally thought that Ling Han had only blurted out that he wanted to take the alchemist test because he had been angered to the point of exploding. However, the truth was not like that. Could it be that he wasn't here to buy pills? Come to think of it, Lu Xianming should be very good to this guy. In that case, no matter what medicinal pill Ling Han wanted, Lu Xianming would be able to provide it to him. Was there a need for Ling Han to come here personally? However, no one was perfect, and there was a limit to one's energy. Furthermore, Ling Han was far from reaching the limits of his cultivation level, so where would he find the extra time to spend on alchemy? How did he learn to do this? All-round genius? I don't believe it. However, regardless of whether he believed it or not, Ling Han had already entered a state of incisiveness. In just half a day, a batch of cyan rainbow pills had already been refined. This was naturally of the highest quality. Passed. That mid-level trainee's face was filled with admiration. No wonder he could obtain Can's personal accompaniment, and no wonder he could concoct the green rainbow pill of the highest difficulty level. He indeed had such ability. Meanwhile, Can's expression was incredibly dark. This was practically a slap to his face. Ling Han smiled and said, "Now, let's continue with the intermediate apprentice test." The middle-ranked acolyte was no longer qualified to be a witness. He immediately went to report, and 3 high-ranked acolytes walked over. "Greetings, Holy Son." They first bowed towards Kansas. Can waved his hand. He was now rather curious as to where Ling Han's limits lay. "Let's refine the heaven and earth unity pill," he said. The 3 high-grade apprentices all faltered upon hearing this. A long time ago, the heaven and earth heart pill was a high-grade pill, but due to certain reasons, it was classified as a mid-grade pill. However, this was enough to show just how difficult it was to refine. The other party was going to take the mid-level apprentice examination, yet you directly took out an almost high-tier pill for him to refine. Wasn't this making things difficult for him? However, they did not dare to say anything. Since the Lord Saint had spoken, who would dare to cause trouble for themselves? Thus, Ling Han began to refine the heaven and earth unity pill. The moment he began, these 3 high-grade acolytes became completely intoxicated, deeply convinced by Ling Han's skills. This was truly a newbie. He was practically a veteran alchemist, able to slip away as he pleased. Pass. After appraising Ling Han's completed pill, the 3 high-grade acolytes unanimously gave him a 5-star high evaluation. Ling Han broke into a smile. Continue with the advanced apprentice test. An acolyte was an acolyte. Even if it was a high-grade one, it could not possibly alarm an alchemist. It was just that the number of witnesses had increased from 3 to 10. Oken did not say anything else at the side. He could finally tell that Ling Han indeed had extremely high attainments in the field of alchemy. Forget it, so what if you've been certified as a high-grade acolyte? You don't have many days left to live anyway. Alchemist? What a joke. Even if a high-grade acolyte wanted to climb to this level, it would be impossible to achieve without over 100 million years of cultivation. But Ling Han's flame of life would not surpass 10,000 years at most, so how could it be possible? Without Oken pressuring him from the side, the difficulty of this test naturally decreased sharply. Ling Han could refine any high-grade alchemical pill he wanted, and it was not a specific one. This was naturally logical. The alchemy room also had its own time acceleration function, and a mere day later, the high-grade alchemical pill was completed. Pass. The 10 high-grade acolytes had long since been convinced by Ling Han's skills, and were not stingy with their expressions of admiration. Even Ling Han could not stand their slightly fervent gazes. Continue with the alchemist test, Ling Han hurriedly said. As these words left his mouth, the surroundings instantly fell silent. Take the alchemist test? Hiss, you're so ambitious. Do you know how many alchemists there are even in Alchemy City? 138,643. Don't say a few 100,000, but how big was Alchemy City? This was a 4-star city, and its population was counted in the trillions. Furthermore, these alchemists were not all from Alchemy City, but about half of the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. That was only a little over 130,000 points. From this, it could be seen how high the threshold for alchemists was. Which alchemist had not been a high-grade acolyte for hundreds of millions of years, billions of years, or tens of billions of years? Some people still held the title of high-grade acolyte even when they died of old age. Furthermore, this was the fate of the great majority of people. If it were not so, how could alchemists possess such a high status? The rarer something was, the greater its value, and so were people. From a certain aspect, alchemists were even rarer than exquisite beauties. What can't I? Ling Han asked smilingly. The test is possible, but to refine a celestial pill, you must use celestial medicine, a high-grade acolyte said. This palace does not provide celestial medicine, and you must prepare your own. No problem, Ling Han said. Seeing how certain Ling Han was, Oken finally showed a wary expression. Ling Han could really do it. No one was an idiot. If they did not have some confidence, who would come to the alchemist palace and fail in public, losing face and wealth? But to say that Ling Han had the strength of a 1-star alchemist, how could anyone believe that? After the 10 high-grade acolytes exchanged a look, someone said, "That's fine, but an alchemist must be present for the test." They did not have the right to come and test an alchemist. Ling Han nodded. An alchemist test, this was a grand spectacle. Just think about it, there were only a few alchemists in the whole of Alchemy City, and to be able to become an alchemist, they had to at least be in the severing mundane tier, but after such a long period of time, there were actually only a little over 130,000. Thus, when they heard that someone was going to take the alchemist test, this naturally caused a great commotion. It was possible that this was a rising star, and perhaps he would become a big shot of Alchemy City in the future. To say nothing of the alchemists, even a great many martial art clans all sent people over to observe. A newly advanced alchemist was worth roping in. However, when everyone found out that the person taking the alchemist test was actually Ling Han, all of them had similar thoughts. Are you joking? You are a martial art prodigy, a man who defeated Zhao Qingfeng with a minor level lower, and now you actually go and refine Russian alchemical pills without attending to your proper duties? Has your head been kicked by a donkey? It was not that alchemists were bad, but that you could not put the cart before the horse. If you had so much energy, why didn't you spend it on martial art? Chapter 1885. After learning that this person was Ling Han, everyone's anticipation instantly dropped by half. There were specializations in every field, and a person's energy was limited. This was an incredibly realistic problem. How many years had you lived? Those with good judgment could judge very accurately. Within 500 years of age. Then, even if you had spent your time in the time cultivation chamber from birth, and had even been accelerated at the highest level, it would only be 50,000 years at most. 50,000 years to become a one-star alchemist. What kind of joke was that? You had to be crazy. But no matter what, the fact that the greatest genius of martial art was actually taking the test for alchemist still piqued the interest of most people, and they began to watch from the sidelines. And when the news spread, it even alarmed a few holy sons and holy daughters. They were all qualified to compete for the position of chairperson, like Lu Xianming, Jiao Bang, and Qin Guyu. The remaining holy sons and holy daughters had long since stopped caring about worldly affairs because they knew that they had no hope of winning, and kept an incredibly low profile. In terms of the most shocked, it had to be Lu Xianming. What did Ling Han mean by this? Such doubts churned in his mind. He didn't want to be a genius of martial art, so why did he want to become an alchemist? Once Ling Han really became a one-star alchemist, then the significance of this would be too great. A one-star alchemist who had not surpassed 50,000 years of age, this was a supreme, super genius. In fact, it was even more shocking than Ling Han defeating Zhao Qingfeng. After all, there were many geniuses of martial art. To say nothing of those far away, just Yan Xianlu alone could suppress an era, becoming a supreme monarch. However, a one-star alchemist with 50,000 years of age, that was really unheard of. This kind of genius would be strongly supported by Alchemy City, a new holy sun? With the titles of a genius of martial art and a genius of alchemy, which holy son or holy daughter could compete with Ling Han for the position of future chairperson of Alchemy City. He was definitely unmatched, invincible. Lu Xianming felt a rumble in his head. At this moment he only had one thought, and that was that Ling Han definitely could not succeed. Otherwise, he would be forced to stand on the opposite side of Ling Han. He would never allow anyone to threaten his position as the future leader. He couldn't help but look towards Qin Guyu, Jiao Bang, and Kansas. Coincidentally, these three people were also looking at each other. They could all sense a signal from each other's eyes, and that was that they definitely could not have another holy son, especially a monster like Ling Han. However, the majority of people did not have such thoughts. On the contrary, there were some who were very expectant. If Ling Han could succeed, then he would definitely become a legendary figure of Alchemy City in the future, as he excelled in both martial arts and alchemy. Under such circumstances, filled with complicated expectations, Ling Han entered the alchemy chamber and began his most important step in Alchemy City. He was naturally refining the purple moon soul suppressing pill. Merely the time required to concoct this pill would be as long as 3 months. Thankfully, this alchemy chamber had the effect of accelerating time, and it was as high as 100 times. Thus, if Ling Han could succeed, he would only need a single day. In the eyes of the crowd, all of Ling Han's movements had been sped up 100-fold. Thus, his movements appeared even smoother and faster. However, even if it had been sped up 100-fold, his movements were still as smooth as flowing water, giving those who saw it a pleasant feeling. Gasps of astonishment rang out. There was no lack of true alchemists here. As the saying went, the laymen enjoyed the liveliness, while the experts knew the ropes. From Ling Han's movements, this was indeed the style of an experienced alchemist. This caused them to be extremely shocked. Such a young alchemist was too inconceivable. It could only be said that there really were geniuses in this world. It was just that they had not discovered them in the past. The expressions of Lu Xianming, Ken, and the others also became more and more unsightly. Ling Han had already begun concocting the pill. Though this was the most important part, an ominous feeling had already risen up in them. Perhaps this guy would really be able to succeed. They were all afraid. Though they were all holy sons and holy daughters, and had even reached the height of 2-star alchemists, compared to the achievements that Ling Han had obtained, they were completely overshadowed. There were many alchemists in Alchemy City whose level was higher than theirs, so why were they the only ones who had become holy sons and holy daughters? Because they had the potential to rush up to 3 stars, 4 stars, or even 5 stars. But if Ling Han could become a 1-star alchemist within 50,000 years, then his potential would undoubtedly surpass everyone else's. This was a great enemy. The 4 holy sons and holy daughters' gazes intersected, and powerful killing intent rose up in all of them. Even Lu Xianming was no exception. His heart had already become very hard. In the outside world, a day's time passed very quickly, and inside the alchemy chamber, Ling Han was also about to pass 100 days. In his hands, alchemy had become an art, exuding a kind of beauty. He suddenly slapped the alchemy cauldron forcefully. The 9 heavens flame moved slightly, and the alchemy cauldron instantly exploded. Failed. Everyone had been completely intoxicated, and seeing the alchemy cauldron suddenly explode, they were naturally extremely disappointed. But that was fine. Being able to persist for so long before the cauldron exploded, then in less than a few times, Ling Han would definitely be able to become a 1-star alchemist. Such a young 1-star alchemist, and added with the halo of being the greatest genius in martial art, what kind of concept was this? A new star, definitely a super new star, and was worth recruiting at all costs. Lu Xianming and the others also breathed a sigh of relief, but they all became extremely cautious. They definitely had to get rid of Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, once he became a 1-star alchemist, or even a holy son, then they would not be able to escape. However, everyone's expression changed in the next second. Though the alchemy cauldron had been broken, 3 alchemical pills were fluttering in the alchemy chamber as if they had grown wings, and were about to escape. Success, success. Everyone was stunned. This was really unexpected, and the expressions of Lu Xianming and the others instantly became incredibly ugly. They realized that a frightening opponent had appeared. Ling Han opened his hand and caught those 3 fluttering alchemical pills. As his origin power surged, they instantly stopped obediently in his palm. He pushed open the door and walked out, tossing the alchemical pills to an alchemist, and smilingly said, "Please inspect them." Shwa! Instantly, a great many alchemists crowded over. Gasp! Not only did he succeed, it's actually medium grade. This young man, are you sure he's a genius in martial art? I've been a 1-star alchemist for more than 7 billion years, and even now, I still can't concoct medium-grade celestial pills. In comparison, I'm practically at the level of an idiot. All the alchemists were talking at once, all incredibly stunned. It was really not easy for an alchemist to appear, what more this kind of newcomer who had made his debut the strongest. This was fuck you scary, directly starting from medium grade. Ling Han. An alchemy apprentice walked over. On the surface, he only looked to be 15 or 16 years old, but his actual age was at least millions and millions of years old. The fire of life could not lie. Seeing him walk over, everyone's expression became stern. Even those alchemists were no exception, and they all opened up a path for him. They did not revere this alchemy apprentice, but rather the person he represented. Alchemist Zi Cheng. Chapter 1886. I am. Ling Han smiled faintly. The alchemy apprentice was slightly lazy and said, "My master invites you." "Who is your master?" Ling Han asked. He didn't recognize this alchemy apprentice. The alchemy apprentice showed an expression of arrogance and said, "You don't even recognize my master, and you can actually become an alchemist?" Ling Han couldn't help but feel annoyed. Whether I can become an alchemist or not is something that can be decided by your bullshit. Or you. He clasped his hands behind his back and said, "Heh, I indeed don't recognize who your master is. Moreover, who are you to speak to me like this?" In terms of strength in martial art, he could practically crush all severing mundane tiers, and in terms of skill in alchemy, he was already a one-star alchemist. But this alchemy apprentice's strength in martial art was third severance, and a mere alchemy apprentice was at most a high-level trainee. "Are you worthy of being arrogant to me? Fuck off." The alchemy apprentice couldn't help but tremble in anger. He pointed at Ling Han and said, "How dare you actually dare to insult me? Can't I insult you? You're nothing in the first place, and you still dare to strut around in front of me." Ling Han was completely unconcerned. "Let me ask you, what right do you have to be on equal footing with me?" I. The alchemy apprentice was speechless. He could be so arrogant naturally because of alchemist Zicheng. As for himself, if he wasn't completely worthless, at least he wasn't anything to brag about. The main reason was because he was used to being arrogant normally. As alchemist Zicheng's personal alchemy apprentice, everywhere he passed by, everyone would be polite to him. Even Immortal Palace tier elites would affectionately call him Little Mo when they saw him. Alchemists were naturally no exception. Alchemist Zicheng was one of the only 3 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City. Thus, even 3-star alchemists were very polite when they saw him and would always have requests from him. For example, they wanted to see alchemist Zicheng and have him report to him. But now, a mere 4-star alchemist, a newly advanced 1-star alchemist, actually dared to point at his nose and scold him? Are you trying to rebel? Ling Han, you've gone too far. The alchemy apprentice shrieked. "If you offend me, you'll find it difficult to take a single step in Alchemy City." Seeing this scene, the crowd shook their heads. This pill attendant's surname was Mo, and most people would address him as Pill Master Mo. Even though he wasn't a pill master, everyone would still give him some face. As alchemist Zicheng's trusted aide, this alchemy apprentice Mo possessed great authority. Practically no one dared to offend him. Even Lu Xianming and the others were very polite in front of this person. "This brat is really young and impetuous. Why are you bickering with alchemy apprentice Mo? If he speaks ill of alchemist Zicheng, you'll definitely suffer." Okan's anger had dissipated a little, because he was not the only one who had been angered by Ling Han. Even he was not willing to offend alchemy apprentice Mo, but Ling Han had directly taken the blame without even thinking. Although he hated Ling Han, he couldn't help but admire him. Ling Han snorted and said, "You're just a dog. What are you barking for? Don't forget, everything you have was given to you by others. Of course, you can take it back as well." "You think you're worthy?" Alchemy apprentice Mo shouted hoarsely. He had never been looked down upon like this before. He definitely had to make Ling Han lower his head in front of him. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "I won't lower myself to the level of trash. Move aside, don't block the way." Seeing that Ling Han was about to leave, alchemy apprentice Mo hurriedly jumped out, stretched out a hand to stop him, and said, "You're not allowed to leave." "What? You want to fight with me?" Ling Han asked smilingly. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Alchemy apprentice Mo was arrogant in the first place, and furthermore, he was someone in the field of alchemy, so he naturally did not know much about Ling Han's situation. In his eyes, though he was a 3rd severance because his alchemy skills were lacking, he had put more effort into martial art. Hence, he, a 3rd severance, would not lose to a 4th severance alchemist. Pooh, a considerable number had already laughed out loud. Truly, the ignorant were fearless. It was quite interesting. When they heard that Ling Han was going to take the alchemist test, they were incredibly shocked. But on the other hand, alchemy apprentice Mo only thought that Ling Han was an alchemy prodigy, so when he heard Ling Han say that he was going to fight, he naturally scoffed. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that there was actually such a prodigy in this world? Alchemist so someone flattered, hurriedly revealing Ling Han's background. Holy shit! Alchemy apprentice Mo instantly grimaced. "Are you still human? So be it if you're so strong in martial art, but you're actually also an alchemy prodigy? Are you trying to let me live? His aura instantly weakened, but because he was used to being arrogant and domineering, he immediately puffed out his chest and said, I won't fight with a barbarian like you. If you insult me, that is equivalent to insulting Alchemist Zicheng, and that is equivalent to insulting the entire Alchemy City. Who here would agree to let you do as you please? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, You're really quite thick-skinned. You're just a mere alchemy apprentice, and you're only a high-grade trainee at most. You're a mere third severance, and you actually say that insulting you is equivalent to insulting the entire Alchemy City? I really don't believe that. Humph, it's good that you know. Alchemy apprentice Mo was slightly smug. This wasn't the first time that he had used his connections to intimidate others. Even many king tiers had to lower their heads in front of him. Ling Han nodded and said, If you have the ability, try insulting me. So what if I insult you? You lowly bastard, I'll insult you 100 times. Alchemy apprentice Mo hadn't even finished speaking when he was lifted up by the neck by Ling Han. He naturally couldn't continue speaking, and his legs kicked wildly in panic. His face had already turned green. Everyone heard it. He was the one who insulted me. Ling Han shrugged, appearing to be quite innocent. I'm a dignified one-star alchemist, and this little alchemy apprentice actually dares to insult me. Do you guys think that he deserves a beating? Of course he deserves a beating. He didn't wait for anyone to reply. But he slapped alchemy apprentice Mo across the face. There was a lot of force behind this slap, and alchemy apprentice Mo directly spat out a mouthful of blood along with a few broken teeth. One side of his face was visibly swelling up. Everyone gritted their teeth. As the saying went, if you want to beat a dog, you have to beat its master. Alchemy apprentice Mo's master was Alchemist Zicheng, a top-tier figure in Alchemy City. Was he someone that could be taught a lesson? However, the problem here was that Ling Han was extremely reasonable. A measly high-grade trainee like you dares to insult a one-star alchemist? What do you think the hierarchy is? If there weren't even any rules, how could you achieve anything? Pa. Ling Han continued to slap alchemy apprentice Mo until he was satisfied. Only then did he casually toss alchemy apprentice Mo to the side. Since he dared to slap alchemy apprentice Mo like this, he naturally had his own considerations. He wasn't acting on impulse. Firstly, Alchemist Zicheng definitely liked him very much. That was why he had sent someone to invite him over. Then, as long as this great alchemist was a normal person, he wouldn't listen to alchemy apprentice Mo's one-sided statement. Secondly, even if Alchemist Zicheng had been fooled, weren't there still 2 4-star alchemists here? On one side was a terrifyingly young prodigy alchemist, while on the other side was only a lackey. Who do you think those 2 great alchemists would side with? If the scales still tipped in alchemy apprentice Mo's favor, then there would be no point for Ling Han to stay here. He wouldn't want such a rotten force even if it was given to him. Ling Han waved his sleeves and swaggered off. From Lu Xianming's expression, he could tell that it was impossible for him to stay in alchemy apprentice Mo's residence. It was better to leave before Lu Xianming said anything. Everyone looked at Ling Han's back as he left, and then at alchemy apprentice Mo who was still groaning on the ground. A feeling of admiration welled up in their hearts. This brat's really awesome. Chapter 1888. Holy Sun. Sun Dong scooted over, his eyes a little sinister. Lu Xianming glared at him and said, Don't say anything. He wanted to be alone and carefully think of a strategy. Yes. Sun Dong hurriedly retreated, but there was a hint of a sinister grin at the corners of his lips. As long as Lu Xianming did not help Ling Han, how was Ling Han going to survive this tribulation? Beating up Alchemist Zicheng's alchemy apprentice? Could he easily survive? He laughed internally, and then his smile became wider and wider, almost unable to hold back his laughter. Elsewhere, Ogun, Qin Guyu, and the others were also discussing a strategy with their subordinates. Ling Han's sudden rise had completely disrupted their plans. Perhaps Lu Xianming was no longer the target that they had to join forces against. In fact, they even had to join forces with Lu Xianming to deal with Ling Han. But in the end, they still decided not to do anything. Ling Han had beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo, and with alchemist Zicheng's protectiveness, how could he let Ling Han off? Since alchemist Zicheng was going to make a move, why would they need to expend effort? Could it be that they could settle something that alchemist Zicheng could not? Thus, they chose to temporarily sit back and watch. Not only them, but a great many forces in the city also temporarily stopped their recruitment of Ling Han. They wanted to see if Ling Han could survive this life crisis. If he could not, then they would have wasted their time and resources for nothing. And it was at this moment that Ling Han went to the Alchemist Pavilion. From the second level onward, there were no inns in Alchemy City. Those that could come here were either people of Alchemy City, or had some special status, and were directly received by the officials. Thus, even if Ling Han had money, he had no place to stay, so he could only go to the Alchemist Pavilion. He was now a one-star alchemist, so he naturally had the right to stay in the Alchemist Pavilion. No one could chase him away. When Ling Han arrived with a beauty, everyone in the Alchemist Pavilion had different expressions. You actually dared to come here? After recovering from their shock, the majority of people focused their gazes on the Empress. Thankfully, the Empress was wearing a veil on her face. Otherwise, if her true appearance was revealed, it would probably cause a huge commotion here. Ling Han smiled faintly and pulled a random person over, saying, "I heard that alchemists all have a place to stay here. Is that true?" That person's face instantly turned bitter. He felt that he was really too unlucky. Ling Han didn't capture anyone else, but he did. What if he was tainted by bad luck? But since it was Ling Han's question, he didn't dare to ignore it. That was because Ling Han was so audacious that he even dared to beat up alchemy apprentice Mo. Yes. He nodded. Well, what procedures do you have to go through? I want to stay here, Ling Han said. The pill refining rooms here all had time acceleration, and the reason he needed the time cultivation room was not for his cultivation. Thus, he could save a lot of money and concoct pills here. That unlucky person could only do as he was told. He was an elementary alchemist apprentice, so in front of a one-star alchemist like Ling Han, he could only be subservient. However, his face was as bitter as a gourd. Everyone was astonished. Ling Han had just beaten up alchemy apprentice Mo, yet he dared to come to the Alchemist Pavilion so casually now? Where did he get his courage from? True, if he wasn't so audacious, how could he have dared to beat up alchemy apprentice Mo? Ling Han had just settled down when he saw alchemy apprentice Mo arrive again. Ling Han, get the hell out here. Ling Han walked out of the room, only to see alchemy apprentice Mo standing there fiercely, looking completely unafraid of him. He couldn't help but smile and say, "What? I didn't beat you to my heart's content, so you're here again?" Alchemy apprentice Mo couldn't help but blush. The previous experience was a great humiliation for him. He humphed and said, "Don't be so smug. I've come here on Grandmaster Zicheng's orders to bring you to receive your punishment." As expected, everyone nodded in their minds. Alchemist Zicheng was renowned for shielding those close to him, and it was precisely because of this that alchemy apprentice Mo was able to act so domineeringly. If this matter could be easily resolved, why would everyone be so apprehensive of alchemy apprentice Mo? Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, "You've come to fake an imperial decree again. Since this is Grandmaster Zicheng's order, then show me his handwritten decree." Alchemy apprentice Mo faltered for a moment. Where had this handwritten decree come from? Who in Alchemy City didn't recognize him? He was Grandmaster Zicheng's alchemy apprentice, and his words represented Grandmaster Zicheng's will. It was also because of this that he could sometimes fake imperial decrees, and he could mess with whoever he wanted. Of course, he didn't dare to go too far. However, this time, it was indeed Grandmaster Zicheng who had spoken, and he had told him to bring Ling Han over. However, he hadn't said that he would punish Ling Han. It was alchemy apprentice Mo who had added his own understanding. In his mind, Grandmaster Zicheng doted on him so much, so if he didn't summon Ling Han to punish him severely, then why would he do so? But I really don't have a handwritten decree. You actually dare to suspect me? Alchemy apprentice Mo roared in anger. He had truly been wrong this time, and he was extremely unhappy. Ling Han shook his head and said, I'm a one-star alchemist, and you're merely a lowly alchemy apprentice, so why can't I suspect you? Moreover, there's a strict hierarchy among alchemists. A lowly alchemy apprentice like you isn't qualified to order me around? Who gave you such guts? As expected, I still haven't beaten you to your heart's content. You dare? Alchemy apprentice Mo said in a stern voice. However, he continuously retreated. He was truly afraid of Ling Han. In the past, no one had dared to hit him. However, not long ago, he had suffered a beating from Ling Han, so this was naturally still fresh in his mind. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, If you don't have a guilty conscience, why are you retreating now? Retreating? It's naturally because you've scared me. However, alchemy apprentice Mo couldn't say this out loud. Doing so would make him appear extremely weak. He stubbornly tried to boost his morale and said, I won't lower myself to the level of a barbarian like you. My master has already said that he wants you to immediately go and see him. If you don't listen, you'll have to bear the consequences. He was using alchemist Zicheng to pressure Ling Han. A 4-star alchemist was comparable to a celestial king. Ling Han didn't back down in the slightest. Instead, he said, Oh, I only know that some people have issued fake decrees. Also, if someone messes up twice, who knows what will happen? Alchemy apprentice Mo's expression involuntarily changed. He was indeed favored, but this didn't mean that he could really mess around. If he failed to complete alchemist Zicheng's orders twice, Ling Han would definitely be in a miserable state. However, how good could he be? He wasn't some powerful figure, and he was irreplaceable. Ling Han, I didn't issue a fake decree. My master has indeed ordered me to send you over. He relaxed, no longer being overbearing. Right now, the most important thing was to trick Ling Han into going to the 5th level. Once he arrived there, alchemist Zicheng would issue a strict order, and Ling Han would naturally not be able to escape. However, alchemist Zicheng hadn't given him a clear order to capture Ling Han, so how could he dare to act recklessly? He could make use of alchemist Zicheng's words to a certain extent, but he definitely didn't dare to fabricate anything. He was still aware of this rule. Ling Han shook his head and said, There's no proof. In any case, I don't believe you. Alchemy apprentice Mo was a little driven mad. Why are you so unreasonable? He hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth and saying, Then what do I have to do to make you come with me? Everyone was astonished when they heard this. Alchemy apprentice Mo was clearly giving in. He was actually giving in? Could it be that this guy was a bitch? The more respectful one was to him, the more arrogant and manipulative he would be. However, after being beaten up by Ling Han, he actually became obedient? Reading on a cell phone is more refreshing. Chapter 1889. To alchemy apprentice Mo, this was an extraordinary humiliation. He had actually lowered his head to someone who had humiliated him. Just thinking about it made him feel aggrieved. However, he had already displeased alchemist Zicheng once. Could it be that he had to return alone this time? He couldn't bear alchemist Zicheng's fury. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, My legs are a little sore. He retrieved a chair and sat down. Then he crossed his legs. His intentions couldn't be more obvious. Come, massage my legs. Fuck, awesome. Everyone's heart thumped upon seeing this. Ling Han was far too daring. He actually wanted alchemy apprentice Mo to massage his legs. One had to know that alchemy apprentice Mo was a servant of Grandmaster Zicheng. Did he think of himself as the second Grandmaster Zicheng? Alchemy apprentice Mo's face instantly flushed red. This is too much, too much. Ling Han, are you not going to give yourself a way out? He asked loudly. He felt incredibly aggrieved. What did I do to you? Ling Han asked slowly. Indeed, Ling Han hadn't said anything at all. Everything was just alchemy apprentice Mo's understanding. However, who wouldn't understand his intentions? Alchemy apprentice Mo gritted his teeth and said, This is your condition? Ling Han merely smiled and didn't say anything. Alchemy apprentice Mo was about to explode in anger, yet he had no choice but to suppress his anger as he weighed the pros and cons. In the past, he had also received orders from alchemist Zicheng to summon certain people. Who wouldn't be as excited as a monkey after being summoned by alchemist Zicheng? They only knew how to continuously express their gratitude to him. Thus, he could take advantage of this opportunity to force them to give him benefits. However, Ling Han was different. He directly fell out with him. Thinking about it now, Alchemy Apprentice Mo truly felt some regret. Actually, if he hadn't been so arrogant, and had treated Ling Han just a little better, all of this wouldn't have happened. Who asked him to treat Ling Han as if he were those people from before? Time could be sped up, but it couldn't be rewound. Thus, he couldn't start all over again. If he failed again this time, he would very likely fall out of favor, and what would that mean? Alchemy Apprentice Mo clearly knew that although there were many people trying to curry favor with him and curry favor with him now, that was all because he was a subordinate of alchemist Zicheng. Moreover, he had also offended who knew how many people. Once he lost this golden reputation, what would await him? There are a lot of people who would kill him. When he thought of this possibility and this terrifying scene, he couldn't help but shiver. He clenched his teeth and slowly walked forward. No way, Pillboy Mo really has to admit defeat. In the eyes of the crowd, every one of them was stunned. It turned out that this person was really tough on the outside but weak on the inside. In the past, they were too afraid of the halo around him. In reality, he was actually a paper tiger. Everyone came to a sudden realization. They could only blame themselves for being too careful. Due to their reverence toward alchemist Zicheng, they had even praised Alchemy Apprentice Mo to the skies. In reality, he was just a mere alchemy boy. What kind of mighty figure was alchemist Zicheng? Would he really be influenced by a measly alchemy apprentice and make a biased decision? Alchemy Apprentice Mo walked over to Ling Han's side. Enduring the humiliation, he squatted down and began to massage Ling Han's legs. Alchemy Apprentice Mo didn't stop until Ling Han shouted for him to stop. Only after at least an hour did Ling Han stretch lazily and say, "It's about time. My legs aren't sore anymore, so let's take a walk." Alchemy Apprentice Mo breathed a sigh of relief. However, there was a vicious glint in the depths of his eyes. As long as he completed Alchemist Zicheng's request, he would definitely make Ling Han better. If he didn't torture Ling Han until he wished he was dead, his surname wouldn't be Mo. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle when he saw this, and he said, "Your expression is scaring me. I'd better sit here for a while longer to calm my nerves." He then sat back down. "Fuck your sister." Alchemy Apprentice Mo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "You can't play like this. I've just massaged your legs in front of everyone, so you can't be so quick to make a divination." He secretly cursed himself. Why did he have to reveal his killing intent just then? What was worse was that he had been caught by Ling Han. He hurriedly said, "It's best not to make Grandmaster Zicheng wait for too long." Although there was a hint of advice in his words, it was more of a plea. He was just short of saying, "Grandpa, don't play around anymore." Ling Han looked at Alchemy Apprentice Mo meaningfully. Only when Alchemy Apprentice Mo's heart started to thump did he say, "Fine, let's go then." Alchemy Apprentice Mo hurriedly walked over to help Ling Han up. His respectful and attentive expression caused everyone to shake their heads. At this moment, Alchemy Apprentice Mo didn't have the slightest shred of arrogance left. Sure enough, evil people needed evil people to deal with them. If Ling Han knew about this, he would definitely feel extremely wronged. What kind of evil person was he? Alchemy Apprentice Mo led the way, while Ling Han lazily followed behind. He had placed the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden into the Black Tower. It was better to be safe than sorry. If Alchemist Zicheng thought differently from him and wanted to use force against him, he could hide in the Black Tower, but what about the two women? As Ling Han and Alchemy Apprentice Mo disappeared into the distance, the crowd immediately started to discuss spiritedly. With Ling Han's departure, would it mean that Alchemy City would lose a rising star from now on? Many people shook their heads, feeling that Ling Han's chances of survival were slim. Although Ling Han had gained the upper hand in his battle with Alchemy Apprentice Mo, the crucial point wasn't Ling Han or Alchemy Apprentice Mo. As long as Alchemist Zicheng was dissatisfied with Ling Han, this rising star definitely wouldn't be able to live until tomorrow. With Ling Han's bad temper, it was really hard to say. Under Alchemy apprentice Mo's guidance, they quickly arrived at the teleportation formation of the city. Alchemy apprentice Mo was still quite influential, so they didn't need to pay any star stones. The teleportation formation was activated, and the two of them were sent to the 5th level. In fact, the space of the 5th level was smaller than the other 4 levels. Of course, this was relative. The absolute area was still astonishingly large. There were only 17 mountains here, and there was a mighty figure on each mountain who occupied a peak. Even if they had descendants, they basically wouldn't live together. Normally, they would have 1 or 2 servants that were similar to alchemy apprentices or Tao apprentices to serve them. Thus, there was almost no trace of people here. As far as the eye could see, there were only green mountains and green trees, and it was full of vitality. Alchemy apprentice Mo led Ling Han to the 7th peak. As for whether there was any particular arrangement of the mountains, Ling Han didn't know. There was no path in the mountains, so Ling Han and alchemy apprentice Mo flew to the top of the mountain. There weren't many strong gales here, so even severing mundane tier cultivators could easily reach the top. A small manor appeared in front of them. It was really very small, and compared to this mountain, it was like a drop in the ocean. Go in, Grandmaster Zicheng has been waiting for you for a long time, alchemy apprentice Mo said with a cold smile. In his mind, Ling Han actually dared to delay alchemist Zicheng's time. Wasn't this an act of seeking death? Ling Han smiled faintly as he strode into the manor. He had a guess in his mind, but he needed to confirm it. Alchemy apprentice Mo didn't enter. Instead, he closed the door and stood guard outside. In the manor, the most eye-catching thing was an alchemy room. It had the most powerful ability to accelerate the flow of time, but it could only accelerate it by 100 times. This was possibly the limit of 4-star forces. Ling Han took a few more glances before looking at an elder who was currently drinking tea in the garden. He had a head full of white beard, but his spirit was hale and hearty. This was especially the case for his eyes, which were bright and spirited. They were filled with a dignified aura. Brat, you're quite bold, huh? Chapter 1890. This old man was naturally alchemist Zicheng. There was an indescribable might in his eyes as he stared at Ling Han. He didn't need to do anything, and a single thought from him was enough to suppress the entire universe. He was indescribably strong. An ascending origin tier elite was naturally powerful enough. Thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind, but his expression didn't change. Instead, he smiled faintly and said, "Senior, I don't really understand. I've asked you to come several times, but you've made all sorts of excuses. Are you even more arrogant than me?" Alchemist Zicheng said, his expression tense. Great Tao formed behind him, transforming into various forms, but all of them were filled with might. This old man was stronger than old demon Blood Shadow. Ling Han thought. Though he could no longer compare the strength of their auras, he felt that alchemist Zicheng was stronger. He smiled and said, "I've been wronged." "Oh, you hit my alchemy apprentice, and you actually say that you've been wronged?" Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but laugh in anger. Ling Han was calm and composed. If alchemist Zicheng really wanted to punish him, there was no need to waste words with him. For a 4-star alchemist, no matter how freakish Ling Han was, he was only a severing mundane tier, a 1-star alchemist. There was no need to take him seriously. Killing him was a matter of a single thought. But now, the other party had so much to say, and added with the fact that Ling Han already had some suspicions, he was naturally more certain. He said, "I've indeed been wronged, and I'm also very aggrieved and angry." "Heh, you're becoming more and more impudent," Alchemist Zicheng said with a sneer. Ling Han was neither servile nor overbearing and continued, "A mere alchemy apprentice actually dares to shout at a 1-star alchemist? Are there any rules? To say nothing of the other 1-star alchemists, even the 2-star alchemists and 3-star alchemists are silent, as if they're used to it. I don't think that's right." "Oh, so this is the reason you hit my alchemy apprentice?" Alchemist Zicheng asked calmly, an unfathomable expression on his face. Ling Han smiled and said, "Exactly. You're truly audacious. Don't you know that there's a saying that goes, even if you want to beat a dog, you must first look at its master," Alchemist Zicheng said in a menacing voice. A terrifying killing intent surfaced on his face, and it was as if he had suddenly transformed into an Azura demon king. He lightly slapped the table. Although there was no sound, Ling Han's heart thumped as if the world had collapsed. This was the might of the ascending origin tier. Their every action could affect the hearts of others. Since you're a talent, I'll be merciful and give you a chance. Alchemist Zicheng paused for a moment before saying, "If you immediately kowtow and apologize to my alchemy apprentice, I can spare your life." Ling Han said without the slightest hesitation, "A scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. Besides, I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I apologize?" I've lived for trillions of years, but this is the first time I've seen such an ignorant kid. Since you're so audacious and arrogant, then you can die with this dignity of yours." Alchemist Zicheng moved, and his palm pressed down. Boom! It transformed into a massive flaming hand that was inscribed with patterns of the Great Tao. To a severing mundane tear, just looking at this palm strike would cause boundless terror to well up in their hearts, to say nothing of blocking it. It wasn't impossible for those who were more timid to be scared out of their wits. Moreover, this palm strike was very slow, as if it wanted to instill boundless terror in Ling Han before taking his life. Ling Han stood as straight as a sword with his hands clasped behind his back. If this palm strike really landed, he definitely wouldn't be able to hide into the Black Tower in time. However, he was making a huge gamble. He was gambling on his understanding of Alchemist Zicheng. If he lost this gamble, the price would be his life. In fact, with the Black Tower in hand, Ling Han didn't need to gamble. As long as he didn't encounter a celestial king, he would be completely safe once he entered the Black Tower. However, as his cultivation level became higher and higher, he increasingly didn't want to rely on the Black Tower. At least, it wasn't a situation where there was no solution. Kneel and beg for mercy, and you'll still have a sliver of a chance to live, Alchemist Zicheng said. His voice rumbled like thunder, and it was so deafening that one's ears felt like they were about to explode. Furthermore, his voice was aimed directly at Ling Han's Tao heart, and it carried with it a supreme pressure. Ling Han didn't even need to speak, and he still stood proudly. Boom! The palm strike landed, and the entire seventh peak trembled a few times. A terrifying might swept over, and Ling Han's figure reappeared. However, he wasn't injured in the slightest. This wasn't because Ling Han was nature-defying and could even withstand the attack of an ascending origin tier elite. Rather, when the attack landed, it just so happened to avoid him. Otherwise, not only would he be a dead man now, but he would also be a dead man whose bones wouldn't even be found. Haha. Alchemist Zicheng laughed loudly. The shocking killing intent that he was exuding had already been completely swept away, and his laughter was extremely joyous. It was as if his mood had suddenly improved to the extreme. Though a cold sweat had already formed on Ling Han's back, there was no change in his expression. He knew that he had gambled correctly. Even if he had gambled wrongly, it wasn't that he didn't have a way out. The indestructible Heaven Scroll could allow him to rise from the ashes, and it could give him another chance. Moreover, it just so happened that he could dispel the black murderous curse. However, if he didn't have to use this kind of rebirth opportunity, it was best not to. This wasn't something that could be used limitlessly. Rather, it was pitifully rare. As his cultivation level increased, he would only be able to use it once or twice more. Moreover, he also viewed the black murderous curse as a form of training, so he didn't want to dispel it immediately. "Brat, you're really very courageous," Alchemist Zicheng said. Ling Han became humble instead. He clasped his hands and said, "Thank you, Senior, for sparing my life." An expression of admiration appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. A person who only knew how to act arrogantly wouldn't have a future. However, Ling Han knew when to yield and when to stand tall. When he needed to be forceful, he was incredibly forceful, and when he needed to be respectful, he didn't lose his etiquette. This made Alchemist Zicheng extremely satisfied. After waiting for so many years, he had finally found a talent that he was willing to accept. "Are you sure that I won't kill you?" Alchemist Zicheng asked. Ling Han smiled and said, "I'm 70 to 80% sure. However, it's not 100% sure. Moreover, what if you're wrong?" Alchemist Zicheng asked. Ling Han still maintained his smile and said, 70 to 80% sure. It's already worth a gamble. He naturally wouldn't say that he could rise from the ashes again. Even if he was wrong, there would still be a sliver of a chance to salvage the situation. Brat. Alchemist Zicheng's eyebrows and beard twitched. He appeared to be very excited, and it was as if he was extremely happy. He waved his hand, and his expression became incredibly amiable. "Brat, come sit here." Ling Han walked over and sat across from Alchemist Zicheng. He placed his hands on his knees, appearing to be extremely respectful. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but feel even more satisfied. His eyes were filled with admiration, and he smiled as he said, "Do you think that I'm the kind of person who would allow those around me to strut around and do whatever they want?" Ling Han told the truth and said, "In the beginning, I didn't understand Senior. However, when I saw Alchemy Apprentice Mo's arrogance and despotic behavior, I indeed thought that Senior was an extremely protective person. However, when I taught Alchemy Apprentice Mo a lesson, it wasn't the law enforcement team that arrived. Instead, it was Alchemy Apprentice Mo. At that time, I knew that Senior definitely wasn't such a person." Alchemist Zicheng's laughter became even more carefree. "Then tell me, why did I allow little Mo to do whatever he wanted? In fact, I even allowed everyone to think that I was such a person." Chapter 1892. Alchemist Zicheng was very satisfied with the expression on Ling Han's face. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Only when Ling Han was interested would he be able to teach him. Otherwise, forcefully forcing him to drink water would not be effective. "I want to know why," Alchemist Zicheng said with a smile. "Yes." Ling Han nodded vigorously. Alchemist Zicheng nodded and said, "This is known as spirit refinement. It interweaves the source power of heaven and earth within the celestial pill with the great Tao in order to increase the quality of the alchemical pill. Spirit refinement could be performed more than once. Every additional spirit refinement would increase the efficacy of the immortal pill by a level. Only a single spirit enhancement is called first refinement, and so on. There are also second refinement, third refinement, and fourth refinement." He paused for a moment, then said, "As far as I know, spirit refinement can be performed 9 times. However, the spirit refinement gets more and more difficult every time. Furthermore, if the refinement fails, the pill will be useless. The strength of an alchemist is not determined by the number of stars they have. It also depends on how many times they perform spirit enhancements. Only those who perform spirit enhancements 5 times or more are qualified to be called grandmasters." Ling Han couldn't help but be curious. "How many times can Senior refine?" Alchemist Zicheng faltered slightly and said, "Different grades of alchemical pills have different levels of difficulty in spirit refinement. Furthermore, it's not certain that a 1-star alchemical pill is better at spirit refinement than a 4-star alchemical pill. For example, that Tao regulating pill you obtained was refined 7 times by me, and if it were some 3-star alchemists, then 3rd refinement or 4th refinement would be the limit. My limit is the 7th refinement. The 7th refinement could raise the grade of a medicinal pill 7 times. After the 7th refinement, even if it was originally a low-grade medicinal pill, its effects would far surpass that of a top-grade medicinal pill. Do you want to learn?" Alchemist Zicheng looked at Ling Han with a smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. Teaching an outstanding disciple, or even a disciple that surpassed his own, was also a great sense of accomplishment for him. "Yes." Ling Han immediately nodded. However, a proud expression appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face, and he said, "However, what right do you have to become my disciple and have me personally guide you?" Ling Han tried hard to think. Talent in martial art was definitely not worth mentioning. The other party was an alchemist, so he would definitely not care about his talent in martial art. But in terms of alchemy ability, he was practically standing at the pinnacle of alchemy. Did he need to care about him? He scratched his head. Could it be that he had the confidence to become a 5-star alchemist and bring glory to alchemist Zicheng? Being able to nurture a 5-star alchemist was naturally a great honor for the master. Unfortunately, just like how no one could guarantee that they could become a celestial king, it was naturally the same for 5-star alchemists. Then let me ask you in another way. Alchemist Zicheng naturally wouldn't reject Ling Han. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken so much with Ling Han. The reason why he did that was to give Ling Han a warning, telling him that he shouldn't be too arrogant and complacent. Why do you want to learn alchemy? Why learn alchemy? Ling Han thought about it and realized that he had quite a lot to pursue. After he refined the pill, he could use it for himself, or he could give it to the people around him. He could also use it to make friends, sell it, or exchange it for some special items. After all, some items were not for sale and could only be exchanged. Ling Han thought for a long while, and then thought of all the things that alchemist Zicheng had done before, and finally said, to earn money, this wasn't completely to cater to alchemist Zicheng. He indeed needed large amounts of star stones to exchange for godly metal so that he could improve the quality of his divine demon sword and advance it to celestial level. This became a heavy burden for him, and it was also the greatest source of motivation for him to earn money. Alchemist Zicheng couldn't help but feel elated. He suddenly clapped his hands and laughed loudly, saying, "Well said, well said. Pay, what noble ideals! What revitalization of alchemy! Pay, when I first learned alchemy, it was because I was so poor. I had no choice but to find a job to support myself. Who would have thought that I was actually made for this? I'll take you as my disciple." Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. This great alchemist was really, how to put it, even though he was vulgar in a way that resonated with him. Alchemist Zicheng waved him over and said, "Brat, hurry up and acknowledge your master." Though Ling Han believed that he was qualified to become a 5-star alchemist in the future, who knew how many obstacles he would have to face on this path? Alchemy was actually just like martial art. The higher one advanced, the more difficult it would be. No, it would be countless times more difficult. How many cultivators were there in the celestial realm, but how many alchemists were there? At least, there were celestial kings in the eastern celestial realm, and there were even 8th heaven tier ones. However, were there 5-star alchemists? At least tens of billions of years ago, there had been a gap. A 4-star alchemist was enough to become his master. More importantly, alchemist Zicheng was also to Ling Han's liking. They were like a pair of turtles, and they liked each other. Disciple Ling Han pays his respects to master. Ling Han knelt down and paid his respects to alchemist Zicheng. Alchemist Zicheng pulled over a chair and sat down. After receiving Ling Han's 3 bows and 9 kowtows, he gladly helped Ling Han up and said, good disciple, you are master's 4th disciple, but also my only disciple at present." A look of reminiscence appeared on his face, and he said, "Those 3 senior brothers of yours are all 4-star alchemists now. Though their level of spirit refinement is still inferior to masters, they are not far behind. However, all of them have withdrawn from the sect now." Ling Han was slightly surprised, and he asked, "Why? Were they ungrateful?" He was slightly annoyed. This was one of the things that he hated the most. Alchemist Zicheng shook his head and said, "If they follow me, they will only reach master's level at most. They will stop at 4-star alchemist, and if they want to become 5-star alchemists, they will have to break free from master's shadow and forge their own path." This was something that both master and disciple had tacitly agreed on. The 3 disciples had established their own sect, and were trying to establish their own system of alchemy to become 5-star alchemists. "Brat, if you can't break free from the norm, master will also expel you from the sect in the future," alchemist Zicheng said solemnly. Ling Han thought for a moment and then said, "Disciple will definitely work hard and not let master expel me." Alchemist Zicheng laughed loudly. He indeed liked Ling Han very much, and that was why he had specially taken him as a disciple. Otherwise, it had already been several tens of billions of years since he had taken a new disciple. However, could Ling Han really surpass the limit of a 4-star alchemist and advance to become a 5-star alchemist? Alchemist Zicheng did not dare to say with certainty. He could only say that Ling Han had a sliver of a chance. The first mission that Master will give you is to ascend to the position of Holy Sun, he said with a serious expression. I can only nominate you. Whether or not you can obtain the agreement of the other 2 4-star alchemists will depend on your performance. Master wants you to reach the first refinement within a year. The year. This was a very harsh requirement. Even if he had the time cultivation chamber to accelerate time by 100 times, that would only be 100 years. Reaching the first refinement was practically an impossible task. However, if Ling Han wanted to become a 5-star alchemist, he would have to overcome all impossibilities. Chapter 1893. Afterwards, Alchemist Zicheng told Ling Han many things about spirit refinement, and of course, the other 2 4-star alchemists in Alchemy City. One was called Heaven Heart, and he was very special. Because he was not born of his parents, nor was he nurtured by heaven and earth, and his original form was a celestial pill. The exact time could not be determined, but it was very likely an epoch ago. At that time, there was still a 5-star alchemist in Alchemy City, and he had refined 11 celestial pills in total in his life, and one of them was the Heaven Heart Tao-seeking pill. This pill was the last celestial pill that the 5-star alchemist had refined, and it was also the culmination of this alchemist's great accomplishments. It was this 5-star alchemist's proudest work, and thus he always kept it by his side. As time passed, this celestial pill actually slowly gained sentience, developed intelligence, and started life. Thus, there was the current alchemist Heaven Heart. Because his life form was completely different, alchemist Heaven Heart's personality was also very different. He focused all his attention on alchemy, wanting to create more of his kind so that he would no longer be lonely. The other 4-star alchemist was called Chu Yi, an old man who loved wine as much as his life and liked to travel. It was very likely that he was the only person in the world who had traveled through the entire Eastern Celestial Realm. It was said that this old man could casually give away the celestial pills he refined for wine. Thus, Chu Yi almost never appeared in Alchemy City and would only occasionally return once every few thousand or tens of thousands of years. It was precisely because of this that Alchemist Zicheng could hold sole authority and also caused a mere alchemy apprentice Mo to become so arrogant, almost riding over the heads of all the holy sons and holy daughters. However, to establish a new holy sun, this was indeed very important, and Alchemist Zicheng could not make a decision on his own. He had to obtain the agreement of the other 2 old companions. Alchemist Heaven Heart was easy. He was in Alchemy City, but Grandmaster Chu Yi had run off to who knew where. Even if there was a transmission talisman that could immediately send news over, with how big the celestial realm was, who knew how long it would take for him to return? Thus, Alchemist Zicheng gave Ling Han a time limit of 1 year. In reality, this was very generous. There was basically no way that Grandmaster Chu Yi would rush back in such a short time. There were 2 reasons why Grandmaster Zicheng would make such a request. Firstly, it was to put pressure on Ling Han, and secondly, Alchemy City had a new holy sun, so they had to invite all the major forces of the world to come and offer their congratulations. Because Grandmaster Zicheng was so fond of him, Ling Han naturally could no longer conceal the truth. He revealed that he had once killed the holy sons and heiresses of 2 celestial king-tier forces. Alchemist Zicheng's expression instantly became extremely interesting. Sure enough, this little disciple is really a troublemaker. He even dared to kill the holy son and female successor of a celestial king clan. Not only was this extremely audacious, it also represented absolute strength. No wonder even Zhao Qingfeng was defeated. It's fine. The old man gritted his teeth. Although he said it was fine, the veins on his forehead were throbbing. Alchemy City was a 4-star force, and only had ascending origin tier elites. Even if alchemists had a transcendent status, and could barely be regarded as a celestial king tier force, it was still just barely. It could not compare to a true 5-star force. If Ling Han had only beaten up their heiress, or even severely wounded them, then Alchemy City would compensate them a little. On behalf of the alchemist, the two celestial king tier forces would not be so overbearing. But now Ling Han had killed their most outstanding heir. Whether this was for the sake of face or profit, there was no reason for the two celestial king tier forces to let the matter rest. Thankfully, you have the Rock Palace behind you. Grandmaster Zicheng breathed a sigh of relief. I once went to the Western Celestial Realm in the past, wanting to visit a great teacher to break through to 5-star, so I have some understanding of this Rock Palace. Even in the Western Celestial Realm, there are a limited number of 9th Heaven Celestial King tier forces. They are true Overlord-level forces. With the reputation of the Rock Palace, and added with my mediation, I should be able to settle this matter. After all, the Zai Clan and Thundercloud Palace are only 1st Heaven Celestial King tier forces. When he said the last sentence, a hint of arrogance appeared on Alchemist Zicheng's face. Grandmaster Zicheng was probably the only ascending origin tier that dared to say that a 1-star Celestial King tier was only. This kind of pride and arrogance was definitely not something that any holy son or holy daughter could compare to. Ling Han nodded and said, I have caused trouble for Master. Grandmaster Zicheng's expression was strange, and he said, I have a feeling that you will cause even more trouble in the future. Sigh. I really don't know whether taking you as a disciple will bring glory or destruction to Alchemy City. To say such words in front of Ling Han, it could be seen that Grandmaster Zicheng really regarded Ling Han as one of his own, and did not try to avoid suspicion in the slightest. Ling Han was actually rendered speechless. He had a halo of trouble, and this had already been proven more than once. To say nothing of the distant, he had just defeated Zhao Qingfeng, and what if this attracted the attention of Yan Xianlu, and he said that he wanted to take him as a subordinate? He definitely would not agree. Then wouldn't he be clashing with Yan Xianlu again? However, he really wanted to spar with Yan Xianlu. Just how powerful was this monarch tier that had been born on the celestial path and was hailed as a supreme monarch tier? Of course, it definitely was not now. Yan Xianlu should already be a 5th severance, and if he encountered him now, he would definitely be beaten viciously. Under the refinement of regulations, it would be useless no matter how strong his godly bones were. Thus, my current target is first refinement and the peak stage of the 4th severance, and then push open the door to the 5th severance, Ling Han said in his mind. He mentioned the natural peach seal to Grandmaster Zicheng. You actually want to break through to the 5th severance? Grandmaster Zicheng was really given a fright this time. Defeating Zhao Qingfeng was indeed proof of Ling Han's strength and freakish talent, but the 5th severance, that was too illusory. In fact, it was only a legend, and no one could achieve it at all. Was this disciple going to excel in both alchemy and martial arts, and reach the peak stage? The old man thought for a moment, and then said, All right, as long as you can become a holy son, Master will gift the natural peach seal to you. Thankfully, he was the master of Alchemy City now. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to pat his chest and make such a promise. Ling Han showed a bashful smile and said, Master, can you give me 2? Grandmaster Zicheng glared at him. What do you want 2 for? Do you want to use one to take the other? My wife also wants one, Ling Han said, rubbing his hands together. Grandmaster Zicheng was instantly dumbfounded. There was still a 5th severance. Fuck, this was a legend. What was a legend? A legend was something that had only been heard of, and could never be achieved. But now, not only did Ling Han want to achieve the 5th severance, but his wife also wanted to achieve the 5th severance. Could it be that he had concocted alchemical pills for too long, and had become stupid? Or was it that he had not left for too long, and was too ill-informed? No, he had to drink a bottle of 820 million years old wine to calm his nerves. We'll talk about everything after you become a holy son. If you succeed, this will be a reward from Master. In the end, Grandmaster Zicheng still gritted his teeth, and agreed. Though he was an alchemist, he really wanted to witness the birth of a 5th severance monarch tier, what more when there were 2, and both of them had a deep relationship with him. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.